ever going to start this podcast you've been talking about for like forever?
Do you think that anyone will actually want to listen to something like this?
What is your plan for an introduction?
Are you sure you want to talk about these topics? People usually disagree.
3 hours? Are you crazy?
Do you think you're some kind of expert or something?
Are you planning to have an intro song?
What if a bunch of people get really mad and hate you over this?
Do you even know how to make a podcast?
Are you just doing this because you like to argue with people?
Don't let this be just one more thing that you talk about doing, but never actually do.
Wouldn't it be better to do just one episode for each topic?
Stop trying to change people's opinions. Just live your own life.
Dude, people are never gonna agree. Just let it go.
Is this going to be a long intro? Because if it is, I'm bored already.
Hello there, and thanks for showing up. Of course, I have an awesome conversation for you today. But also, of course, I have something to complain about before that. Okay, here's the deal. There's something that I really have a problem with. Anyone who knows me well is very aware of this problem. I mentioned it briefly in the Q&A episode when I was accused of mispronouncing someone's name. The problem I'm referring to? Accents. Accents themselves are not the problem, of course. Accents are awesome. The problem is that certain people who don't have them try to have them when they shouldn't. An accent is something that is natural. People just have them because they have always had them. Anyway, here's my question. Why do some people only have an accent on certain words? For example, I was in the Taco Bell drive-thru with a member of my family who shall remain nameless, and who is not a Spanish speaker, by the way. As she began to order our dinner, it went something like this.
Hello, welcome to Taco Bell. May I please take your order?
Yes. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing just great. I'm just really hungry. Boy, let's see. Okay, so I think I'm gonna take 2 burritos, 1 taco, and can I get guacamole on that? And also 1 gordita!
And I was like, whoa, easy now. Are you okay? What just happened? Now, the response I usually get when critiquing this practice is, well, you know, Ryan, that's the right way to say the word. This may be true on a base level. I'm sure that if you are in Spain or Mexico, where Spanish is the main language of the land, that when they say the word gordita, and this is assuming they even have those over there, and this isn't some form of Americanized Mexican food word, they probably say it with an accent. But that's because they already talk that way in general. It's one thing for a person who doesn't have a Spanish accent to have one only when saying Spanish words. I still think that's a little ridiculous, but not as bad as what I am describing here. In the example I just mentioned, this person said many Spanish words, but only used the accent on one of them. How in the world does this make any sense? And who is this for, really? Are the Spanish speakers impressed when a non-Spanish speaker uses the correct accent when saying Spanish words? I imagine that they are just secretly laughing at these people who are attempting. Okay, but back to the point. I would argue that this wouldn't even make sense for an ethnically Spanish person who doesn't speak any Spanish to do. But that's not even the case here. This family member is not ethnically Spanish or Mexican or any of the other ethnicities that have Spanish as their first language. I, personally, am ethnically Italian, among other things. However, I have never been to Italy, and I do not speak Italian. When I go to Olive Garden, I do not order the spaghetti or the fettuccine. I don't get it with marinara sauce. I order spaghetti, and I order fettuccine. You know what I mean? And I am ethnically Italian. So how much weirder would it be if someone who was ethnically Chinese or Russian or something to order from Olive Garden in that way? Same concept. I mean, living in America, we have so many different cultures, languages, and ethnic backgrounds, which is awesome. Because of this, much of our English language is made up of words that were Englishized from other languages. Are we really supposed to say all these words with the correct accent that they started with? Maybe we should. I suggest that we either go one of 2 ways with this. 1, we should start using the correct accent for every single word that we use. Or 2, we should not use any accent at all, unless we already possess that accent. Is this making sense? You should all let me know your thoughts on this. I'll be waiting. Today my guest is Lena Pokol. She is my dad's youngest brother's daughter, which makes her the youngest of all the cousins from my dad's side. She made the 3-hour and 43-minute drive all the way to my house to do this podcast. And that's assuming that she drove the speed limit the whole way. Before she did the podcast, I had only seen her 2 other times in my life. Once at a wedding and once at a funeral. It was really great getting to know her, and as it turns out, she's an awesome person. Afterwards, I was a little upset with myself for not connecting with her sooner. Topics included today are Billy Joel, Fleetwood Mac, Motley Crue, The Eagles, Def Leppard, Whitesnake, Queen, the band, not the Queen, musical theater, Prince, Lita Ford, Ugly Kid Joe, Pearl Jam, Neil Young, Blink-182, Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, Pansexual, Furries, Bronies, Planting the Transgender Seed, Toddler Beauty Pageants, Puberty Blockers, Abortion, Obamacare, Feminism, Reincarnation, Deja-Vu, Evolution, Aliens, Free Will, and Unconditional Love. Also, it won't make sense to you right now, but I want you all to know that Lena was right about Mark Hoppus going to high school in Ridgecrest. Enjoy the conversation. On a lot of levels, because when I do these, a lot of times I already know the person well.
Oh, yeah.
This time I don't. But not only that, but you're my family. So it's like, I should know you well, but I don't.
Right. but that has to do with distance and like, you know, I'm the youngest one of the cousins.
Yeah, the age gap.
There's such an age gap.
How old are you, 28?
29.
29, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm pretty close with Valerie and Stephanie, but, you know, that's only because I talk to them a lot on social media.
Right.
Valerie more so than Stephanie now, especially that Valerie's a mom. You know, her and I have connected on that level for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
I talk to Uncle Ricky a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, talk to Aunt Barbara a lot.
Yeah, see, I don't talk to any of them hardly. Like,
really?
Sometimes I'll see them occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like Valerie and Bethany used to be pretty close, and they talk a lot because they both do Color Street.
Okay.
Or they did. I think Valerie just stopped, but and then a couple times we've gone to San Diego because Bethany's family's all in San Diego.
Okay.
Stephanie was living down in that area for a while, so she would come meet us for lunch or coffee or something, so we could see her occasionally. But
gotcha.
I think it's because I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media, like as far as talking to people. I mean, I post my funny stuff and all that, of course, but I mean, I don't really. It's not my primary form of communication.
Right.
But, yeah, I don't know. But when they lived here, I was with them all the time. You know, Aunt Barbara and Uncle Rick used to live here in this town, and we were.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were for quite a while. I think both girls were born here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Valerie still has a lot of friends here.
Okay.
But yeah, so it should be fun. Yeah, so this is gonna be awesome. So I start with music usually.
Right. Okay.
Did you have a chance to listen to any yet?
I listened to one on the way up here. Which one was it? It was telling me very kindly that I'm going to hell, I think is what the name of it was. It was like the first or second one.
Yeah,
okay,
it's the third
episode
one.
3.
Yeah, Colby. Yeah, that was an interesting one. That one's very theological. We got into a lot of Bible discussion and stuff. And I remember when I did that one, I was like, well, I know there's a certain audience for this, but I don't know if a lot of people are like, this is like, I'm not real interested.
I listened to it. I mean, I'm not particularly religious or anything. I mean, I do believe in God, and I have my own relationship with Him, but I'm not Bible savvy. I'm not, you know, I'm not any of that. I don't attend church as often as I used to. So, but a lot of it was pretty insightful and
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of see the dynamic. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of disagreements on that one.
Right.
There are disagreements. That's totally fine. So, okay, I promise I'm not going to yell at you or anything. I mean, you feel free to believe whatever you want. I totally hold to that. Like, I agree with everybody's right to believe whatever they want. I'm just interested in the whys. Like, I want to talk about, okay, you believe this and I don't. Like, why?
Right.
And I can say, well, I believe this and here's why. And, you know, just different. I just think it's fun to talk about that stuff without getting to, you know, it's just sad because I see so much today that people just can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, you disagree with me? I hope you die. It's like, dude, what in the world is wrong with you?
Exactly.
Like, really? I mean, seriously? Come on.
You know, and it's so crazy because anything that anybody says these days is offensive to somebody.
Right.
You know, you're not
right.
You're not saying these profound things and then everybody agreeing with you. Most of the time these days it's you say something that you think is profound or that you've put a lot of thought into and somebody wants to tell you how offended they are and how wrong you are and how upset and, you know, never any reason as to why they disagree with you, just that they disagree and that you're wrong.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that's sad.
It is.
It's unfortunate. So so I just want to say off the bat, like, again, don't feel like you're gonna offend me with anything you say. I've heard it all. If you listen to any episodes, you know that I'm a Christian. Funny. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's start with music, and I'm hoping that through this, I'm going to get to know like some stuff.
Well, absolutely,
right? Because again, I don't know anything. Like I met you. Refresh my memory. I believe I've only met you twice before this, right?
So at Uncle Ron's funeral,
I wasn't there.
Oh, you were not there.
No. So I think it was at Valerie's wedding.
And then my dad's
your
funeral.
Dad's funeral.
Yep.
Right. Those are the only two times.
Those are the only two times.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
I know. And Dad always talked about you because you were the only boy.
Right.
So you know, it was. I knew Danielle. I knew Vanessa. You know, but. Cousin Ryan.
Right. And when I was younger, I was around your dad a lot. By the time you were born, in fact, I think when he got married here in town, I think that was the last time I saw him for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I saw him interspersed. But before that, he was around a lot. Like I remember him a lot in my childhood. I remember riding on a motorcycle with him.
Yeah.
And, you know, like nothing, just arms around the waist. And I must have been like 7 or 8.
That's probably one of my earliest memories of him too. Is just riding on the back of a motorcycle with him, just holding on for dear life. But I must have been younger. I must have been like 3 or 4.
Okay,
you know, much younger.
That's crazy because I think about that. I was like, will I let my kids do that? I don't think so.
Absolutely
not. It's like that's nuts. But I remember him just being he was funny. He was just a funny guy, and he's my funny uncle. I mean, they were all funny, of course.
Oh yeah,
that whole family is hilarious. But so
I feel like your dad has always come off as really funny too.
He is.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, and I didn't really. I've had more interaction with your mom than I have with your dad, and your dad I've seen mostly in pictures, but like he's always doing something goofy in those pictures. You know, like there's one where it's Nana and Grandpa Ernie sitting at a table, and your dad's sitting there, and my dad's like leaning up against the table, and your dad has this like magnifying glass, and he's like looking up at the camera. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all goofy, and I used to love hearing the stories that they would tell about all that. It's just so funny.
I wish I had been around more for those stories. You know, I know. Yeah. I remember Grandpa Ernie. Yeah. Barely.
Right, because he
passed, I think, in like 99 or 2000.
Yes.
I was very young.
Yes, because my oldest daughter, who's now going to be 25, she was like 1 year old.
Okay.
She's the only one of my kids that ever got to meet him, and even then it was in the hospital. Yeah. Like he was pretty much in hospice at the time. Yeah. And I remember it was, you know, he was breathing because I think he had pneumonia real bad, and it was I'll never forget that sound. Yeah. It was like breathing through liquid. It was just it was bad.
That's awful.
But my daughter wasn't real. I mean, she's always been kind of outgoing, but like with strangers, she's always kind of hesitant. But I'll never forget, like she went in there and she full on embraced him, gave him a hug. It was the coolest thing.
That is
and
so
it was like,
cool.
and then he died like the next day.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like, or maybe 2 days later, I just remember, because we had all went out to eat after that. We all left the hospital and we all went out to eat. I'm sure I'm getting some of this wrong. We went to a Mexican restaurant. I remember that. And I remember either the next day or it had to have been the next day. Because I remember Uncle Rick was really upset because he had told Grandpa that he would be there when he died, and he wasn't. Oh, no. And because we didn't expect him to go that fast, you know, of course. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, it was but it was cool that she was able to meet him and see him. That is really cool. But yeah, none of my other kids got to see either one of them because Grandma died way before that.
Yeah, Grandma died, I think, when I was 2 weeks old, or maybe a little bit longer, because I know I met her when I was 2 weeks old, and then she died shortly after that. Okay. So that's my understanding of it. I know that she was pretty sick too and wasn't around a lot there towards the end, but I know that she got to hold me or meet me or something. Yeah, so that's cool. So yeah, and I mean I of course I have no memory of her except for what my dad has talked about. But it's my understanding she was a pretty neat lady.
She was.
Always wore these Goodwill fur coats around places.
She was awesome. Yeah, my memories of her always on that porch at the Whittier house. She'd always sit on that porch. Of course, that was later in life, but did your parents were you born in Whittier?
I was born in Whittier.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where my older daughter and her husband live right now.
Okay, that's
it's funny how it kind of turns around.
How far away is that from here?
It's about 3 hours.
Oh,
3 hours south. Yeah,
jeez.
Yeah. It's near. She's close to like Disneyland, and she's closer to Knott's Berry Farm.
Right.
In fact, her and her husband have passes there. Oh. And they got a certain pass where I always get the numbers wrong, but it's like $20 more.
Okay.
For the year, right? Oh. To upgrade to this pass.
So it's like a season type of pass?
So you get it for the whole year. You get into Knott's Berry Farm free, but they upgraded, and I think it was like $20 or $30 more for each ticket, and you get free food.
Ooh.
Also.
That's cool.
So sometimes, because they're so close, they'll just drive there for dinner. They're like, like it's not payday yet. We don't have money to get food yet.
Right.
So hey, we got this food's paid for. Let's just go to Knott's Berry Farm and have dinner. And it's like, okay, yeah. It's like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, So anyway, all right. So let's dive in.
Okay.
Music. Are you a big fan? You must be.
I am. I'm a pretty big music fan.
Okay.
It was very, very big growing up. More so from my mom. Not to say that my dad wasn't, because he did play guitar and everything. But
right.
I think where I fall into my favorite, probably anywhere from the 70s to the 90s.
Okay.
I really love Fleetwood Mac.
Oh yeah. Me
Billie
too.
Billy Joel is my favorite of all time. To heavier 80s, I like Motley Crue a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
would you say today still, like, can you still pop on like Dr. Feelgood and you're like, this rocks?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Dr. Feelgood.
Okay.
Well, it kickstart my heart more lately, I think.
Okay.
That's one of those driving songs where it's like you want to drive with the song because it like gets you going, but like it's one of those where like you're gonna see the woo-woos behind you if you blast that song while you're driving,
Yeah.
Let's see, Don Henley, the Eagles.
Okay. Yeah, see, I love I like the Eagles too, but I don't like, what's that, Glenn Fry? Is that the other guy?
Oh, yeah.
I don't like him as much.
No, see, and when Don Henley went solo, that was like really all I cared about,
right.
Like that was like his solo stuff, and he's so good at like everything. Like,
right.
I mean, he's just such a multifaceted musician, with like his lyrics and the drums and guitar and everything,
Right.
So he's definitely a favorite of mine as well.
Okay. And these are ones that I'm assuming, like you said, your mom showed you pretty much, or because this wasn't on the radio when you were growing up. I mean, maybe some radio stations.
Some of them, for the most part. Another early memory that I have is my mom and dad had this apartment together, even though they weren't together. My dad would like go off to work, and my mom would hang out with me, and I would like be in my mom's room, and she had this boombox. And she had a Def Leppard and a Whitesnake CD,
nice.
and so that's kind of where that love of like the 80s rock, 80s hair bands came from, was that like those CDs were there. And I mean, to this day, Whitesnake is another one of my favorites. I'm not so into Def Leppard these days, but like I grew up with it. I like, it's one of those things where you know a song, but you don't know how you know a song, and then you realize you've been listening to that song for 20 years. So
and then it just brings up old stuff.
Exactly.
I just always thought with Def Leppard, I'm like, I give props to anybody who can play drums with one arm.
With one
right? It's
arm,
like, it's just crazy.
I know.
Yeah, it's. I mean, whether you like the music or not, you gotta give credit there. It's
credit where credit is due.
I just would have gave up. I just like, forget it.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, I guess when you love it enough and you're making enough money, there's ways to get around it.
Right.
Nothing's impossible at that point.
Yeah. So going back to Fleetwood Mac, who's another band that I really, really like. I know a lot of people have their issues and all this stuff. People get political with music too, which bothers me sometimes. It's like, I hate Fleetwood Mac because Stevie Nicks said such and such and such. Yep. Or because she believes this. It's like, I don't care.
I just want the music.
Exactly. I don't
music.
really care. I care if the song is good and I like it and I like to listen to it.
Exactly.
But how about this last couple years ago when was it Dreams or Dream? What's the name of that song? I'm forgetting the song. But remember, there was that viral YouTube video of the guy riding a skateboard. Do you know about this? There was a viral YouTube video where he's basically just riding a skateboard. And he's got like a boombox and it's playing. I think it's Dreams.
It's got to be Dreams.
Yeah. And he's playing it, and it just blew up. And all these young kids now are like, oh, and like the song shot to the top of the iTunes charts. And it's like, that song's from like 1971 or something. It's like, really?
I know. And there's a show on Netflix called Daisy Jones and the Six.
Okay.
And the song Silver Springs got really popular again because of that show. And I just think about it like, dude, that has been one of the best Fleetwood Mac songs ever.
Right.
Even in 1997 when they did the live version and she's just staring at Lindsey Buckingham singing the chorus the whole time, just like reminding him of like what the way that he, you know, treated her. And I mean, and I know that there's back and forth with their love story and everything. He says this, she says this, you know, there's her side, his side, and then the truth. And
that's what I was gonna say.
Obviously they're the only ones that know the truth, but you know, and so it just baffles me. And these young 18, 19-year-old kids are like into this music now. And I'm like, if it weren't for these shows or for these viral videos, you wouldn't have even known.
Yeah, well, like Stranger Things and the Kate Bush song is a good version of that just recently, where that song blew up, and it's like the song is old. Like,
I know.
But it's number one on iTunes. Like all the kids are listening to it, and it's like, or even Metallica from Stranger Things. This kid's like, who's this Metallica band? Who's Master of Puppets? What's this? Wait, is this new?
And meanwhile, Metallica's like one of the biggest bands of all time. You know?
Right.
But yeah, gosh. And it's so funny the way that shows and movies can bring old songs back these days, you know. And then I mean, it's sort of refreshing in a sense because you don't have the music these days that you did back in the day. You know, everything was good, everything was authentic and original. You weren't taking, you know, samples from other songs to put into yours, you know.
And that's just gotten worse and worse.
It has.
Like I think about like when my kids have kids, how bad is music going to be?
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be one of those things where either they were raised to appreciate the older music and keep it alive, or music is just going to be just electronic and virtually no musicians anymore, because that's kind of the direction that things are going to, you know. I mean,
with AI and all that stuff.
Exactly. Well, not only that too, but I mean, God, nobody cares about lyrics or good music anymore. They're just concerned about, you know, shaking their rear end on the stage in front of a bunch of people and a bunch of kids, you know, rapping and you know, saying, I mean, racial slurs in these songs, you know, and it's like, that's not what I want to hear.
Which for some reason is okay in that context.
Exactly.
But in any other context, it's the worst thing you could ever do.
Absolutely not okay. Exactly, so, you know, but throwing around the N-word and it's cool in a song and you're cool if you listen to it, but then, you know, the one person says it and oh my gosh, you're the worst person in the world. You're so racist.
They lose their job. You can never make money again.
Exactly.
Run you out of town. Yeah, it's horrible. I don't know. I mean, I know you weren't really around at this time, but like what year were you born?
94.
94. Okay, so you were around, but you probably won't remember this. But like it was the mid 90s, I believe, when Wayne's World came out. And then
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes, right.
Yep.
So nobody, like my generation, I didn't know what that song was when that came out. I didn't grow up listening to Queen, but that movie, and then they had a video and the whole thing, and I was like, oh, this is the coolest song ever. Look how it goes through all these different parts, and it's like this opera and this thing, like rock opera. And
see, Wayne's World got me into Queen, and so I think I was like 13 or 14 years old when I first saw Wayne's World, and I heard Bohemian Rhapsody for the first time, and that kind of like awakened something in me in terms of music. Like I needed to know every Queen song, I needed to know every Queen album, and so I got so into Queen. I mean, geez, I had records. I had old records of Queen. I had one. It was like had that yellow stripe across it, and I think it was like original studio recording or something like that. There was some back in the day with records. I don't know. My dad said it was special, or maybe it was just. Oh, really? It was like a limited edition kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. But so Wayne's World, got me super into Queen, and Queen was really what got me into. Singing, because you know, I'm play with some bands and everything.
So tell me about that. When did that first start? Like, what's your earliest time with that?
Earliest time with that was high school, probably freshman or sophomore year, and it was just, you know, we were a bunch of dumb kids. We didn't know anything other than we liked to play and perform and all that. And it was
like a rock band, or
it was like a rock band. Like we did. You know, we did The Clash, we did The Ramones.
Oh, so like punk rock stuff.
Yeah, cool. I mean, which I'm not so into punk rock anymore these days, but we did some punk rock back then. And then
all covers though, not
all
so much
covers.
writing original. Okay.
All covers. I've tried to write my own songs and my own music, and then like I'll look at it again the next day, and I'm like, God, that's like a dumpster fire. Like, what was I thinking, you know?
But, you know, there's people that have done that and then tried to get rid of it, and somebody in their family will send it to the radio station, and then that's what puts them on the map.
Exactly. And my mom and my dad used to tell me that all the time, too. They'd always be like, well, don't sell yourself short. Like, that's, like, it's pretty good for, you know, a 17-year-old girl, you know, who hasn't really experienced much in life yet. But, yeah, I think high school, and then I kind of took a break because I got more into theater for a while. And then after theater, I had my son, and so I couldn't really do a whole lot. But now that he's older and he's a little bit more independent.
Was he 4 or 5 now?
He's 4. Okay. He's 4, yeah. So now I'm able to actually, you know, have bands. And most of the musicians that are in town at home are already part of, like, major band projects out there. So what I'm doing right now, a lot of it is like side projects for these musicians, you know, so we don't always get a lot of time to meet, but we have done we've done some punk, a little bit of punk, as much as I can, you know, like Joan Jett type of punk, you know, stuff that's more like, I guess, a female singer. Right. Easier for me. But my most recent project that's just been on hold for a while is we were an 80s cover band. Oh, nice. Yeah, so fun. And we were doing Benatar. We were doing Poison. Nice. Yeah, we were looking at doing some Bryan Adams, you know, so. So
how do you just like play shows at like bars and like things like that?
Yeah, so shows at bars.
It's usually cover bands. That's kind of the circuit.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, there's several bars in town from where I'm from. So, you know, and they're all like pretty good about, well, there's one bar that's really, really small that like just doesn't have room for bands or anything, but the rest of them are all like really accommodating for all bands. And I mean, each band draws their own crowd. So, you know, you know people and they come out, and then your friends and your family and everybody. So not only is it good, you know, publicity for the bands, but it's good for the bars and stuff as well. So, but it's a lot of fun. You know, there's also a USO building out there that we have open mic nights and stuff at. So we'll go and just do, you know, whatever little acoustic things or something, you know. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, we do have a fairgrounds, and like the fairgrounds has a big stage with fancy lights and everything. So I guess if somebody really wanted to put on a concert, they could, but that hasn't really been done yet in terms of the local bands. Right. Yeah.
Well, now Ridgecrest is kind of, that's the only time I've ever been there, was I went for your dad's funeral, and
30,000 people.
Yeah. But it's a neat town. It is. Like even the drive out there, and I'm kind of driving through, and it just, I've never really been anywhere like that. It was really interesting. And then even listening to some of the stories that people were telling at the funeral about I don't remember. I didn't know most of the people there, of course, but the one guy was talking about how your dad had said he hated it there, and then the guy saw him again, and he's like, "Oh, what do you?" And he's like, "I live here now." Yeah. And it wasn't like a yippee, I live here now. It was like, oh crap,
I live here now.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's a small, mostly conservative town. There's a Navy base there. Naval Air Weapons Station, which to my knowledge is the largest land naval base in either in the country or in the world. I don't remember, but glow sticks were invented there.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, so
that's a claim to fame you can stand on.
You can thank us for glow sticks, and then back in 2019, we had a 6.4 and a 7.1 earthquake. Ooh. Oh yeah, that was fun.
Was it? Could you feel it really good?
Oh my god, it was bad? The best way that I can describe it would be what I would imagine walking on the deck of a ship during a very bad storm. Ooh. Yeah, and my son was very tiny at the time. He was like 5 or 6 months old. Oof. And I just remember all of a sudden it started shaking, and I scoop up my baby, and I like ran down the hall, and my dad had this like 2-liter bottle of soda in his hand, and he like dropped it. He was like, "Give me the baby," and then I didn't realize he dropped it, and so I almost fell over it.
Oh, no.
We're, like, all trying to get out of the house. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's a small podunk town.
Yeah.
30,000 people, mostly conservative. You know. But again, with a town like that, like, everybody knows everybody.
That's what was endearing about it, I
Yeah.
think. And I got a lot of that just in the small time I was there. Even like the procession.
Oh, yeah.
Just driving through the town and just seeing people taking their hats off and like just like paying respect to the fact that it was a funeral procession. You know?
Exactly.
It's like, I don't know if they would do that somewhere like here. You know?
Well, maybe not, but my dad was also pretty famous and well known in that town, you know. So I mean, they wouldn't have done that for just anybody.
Okay.
So it's because of who he was that, you know, they made such a big deal out of it. And I mean, he was such good friends with the cops in town too that the cops like made it a point to stop and direct traffic, which normally in a procession you just follow the line and, you know, hope that you can keep up with everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was cool too, seeing that. I mean, I've been to quite a few funerals, but I've never seen him put the casket up on a tow truck.
What he wished
that
for.
was
That's
awesome.
Yeah, that's what he wanted.
That's
you know?
so cool.
I know. I'm glad that I got to make those, you know, that final wish come true though, because he'd always talked about that. He'd always like, throw me in a pine box, strap me on the back of the flatbed, and parade me around town. And that's what he got. I mean, you know, I did a little better than a pine box because I wasn't just going to put him in, you know, the cheapest one that they had. So, but yeah, I feel happy and special that he got the send off that he wanted.
Right.
So.
Which is cool that you guys had that conversation beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't always. I didn't like talking about it because.
Well, of course not.
You know,
yeah, it's not a good thing to talk about.
No,
but I mean, him passing was kind of unexpected.
Very
right?
much so.
He was kind of young for that. So
yeah,
it was
he was 56.
Right.
And he had a stroke, and it was right there on the side of the road because he was coming back from Ontario after a tow, and he pulled over because he was going to take a nap because he got real tired and he wasn't feeling great.
Right.
And unfortunately, it just ended up turning into a stroke, and it was something that he just couldn't come back from, unfortunately. But you know, so he died doing what he loved, and he got the send off that he wanted. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Silver linings.
Yeah.
Silver linings for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the fact that both your parents, even though I correct me if I'm wrong, but they were divorced by the time they both were living in Ridgecrest.
Yes.
But yet they both, is that because of you? They wanted to be close to where you were?
So the way that I heard the story was it was like Mother's Day or something, or I was almost a year old, and my mom cleaned out the bank account, packed up the car, and came to town. And my dad had a huge problem with that because he didn't want to be away from me. So
she took you from Whittier to Ridgecrest?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then Dad followed not long after, and pretty much stayed.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, you being his only child, I mean, it's like you want to be near her.
Exactly.
You know? I totally understand.
And it ended up being that my mom kind of got busy with her own things and her life and everything, jobs and boyfriends and what have you, which I can't say I blame her. So my dad became the main parent, you know, and I'd had, you know, he'd had women in his life, you know, and they were all great, you know, they were all nice women, you know, but I mean, it was just me and him for a long time, and so I was very, very close with him. And so when everything happened, I mean, just life kind of like took a plunge.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I can imagine.
And I had to learn how to do things that Dad always did, like car insurance. What the heck? I have to start paying my own car insurance, and like I have to take my vehicle to get an oil change. I can't just call my dad anymore. You know, so you know, there were things that I had to learn to do. And it very much helped me grow up. Right. You know, I mean, becoming a parent helped me grow up, but then losing my parent also just kind of made me grow up even more. Right. So. Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's big time. And you never think it's gonna happen, you know, because to me he was always invincible. Right. He was always like, oh well, nothing's gonna happen to him. He's Superman. He's, you know, he's the toughest person I've ever met in my life. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you know, he's lying in a hospital bed with tubes down his throat, and I've never even seen him sick. Right. You know, so it's traumatizing in a sense, but I think also it's eye-opening, you know, that like life is so short and you really just never know.
Right.
And things will happen in the snap of a finger,
Yeah.
and your whole life will get turned upside down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. Wow. So you mentioned the musical theater.
Mhm.
So is that, or you mentioned theater, I guess what I'm asking.
Theater.
Is it musical theater?
So
is it
theater
like,
and musical theater, as much musical theater I think as that small town could get away with,
Mm-hmm.
because again, a good amount of musicians in town, but not enough musicians for like a full orchestra for a play, you know. We did Rent. I got to be in Rent.
Oh, nice.
We did Sweeney Todd.
fun.
So I was Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney
Awesome.
Todd. Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
that was my favorite.
Yeah. Now is it the same, like when you do all these performances, when they come out with new ones, is it like the same? Do you work with a lot of the same other actors, or is it always totally new people?
So sometimes it's the same, and then sometimes it's you get these high school graduates that are coming into community theater that are, have exited high school theater. Sometimes people move to town and they're, theater oriented. A lot of times the people who, unfortunately, in a small town like ours, there's a lot of politics in theater. And I am not actively involved right now because of the people that are involved in the current politics of the...
Oh, really? It's gotten that bad, huh?
Yes. And I mean, and it's very much like casting friends, without regard to talent or, if anybody's ever even seen a play before, it's just, oh, well, this person's my friend and I want to hang out with them, so I'm going to cast them, So then it's the same director for the last 4 or 5 shows, and so you're seeing the same people from the last 4 or 5 shows, and not necessarily no talent, but not natural talent, I guess, in a sense. So they are acting, but some of them are overacting, some of them are, some of them don't really have a sense of like different characters and different situations, so it's like kind of the same character in each show that they do, even though there's massive contrasts between certain characters and certain shows. And so it's like, and they're not bad. I mean, they get decent reviews for small town theater, but I think another thing too is that a lot of people take it way too seriously. It's supposed to just be fun. It's a volunteer thing. Everybody's supposed to have a good time. And unfortunately, it gets way too political. And I mean, the first time I left was, it was COVID.
Oh, okay.
And so there was somebody in charge who happened to, at the time, be my very best friend in the whole world. And now I haven't spoken to him in like over a year.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. And we were in the middle of a show, and rehearsals were underway. Everything was going. I mean, we were close to performing, and the whole vaccine thing started to roll out. And so it was like, well, if you're not going to get vaccinated, you can't be in the show. And it was like, okay, now hold on.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the bylaws. There's nothing that is, saying that like I have to do this or, I'm not invited. And so it was just his rule that he made because he was which understandably terrified of the pandemic and of COVID.
Especially in the beginning when we didn't know anything, right?
Exactly. And so it was at that point that I was like, if this is going to be more political than fun, then I don't want to be involved anymore, And so I did. I took a step away, and I haven't really gone back since. And now the person who's kind of directing the shows is somebody who's has his own, company, his own production company, quote unquote. And again, he casts all of his friends all of the time, and it's always the same group of people that you see in these shows. And I've mentioned it. Like I've said, I've critiqued it. I'm like, not that the show was bad, not that any of these shows were bad. They're well written, they're well put together. A lot of it is murder mystery theater, but the fact that we're seeing the same faces over and over again, you know? And yeah, sure, it was like that when I was really heavily involved in it, you know, just after high school. But I mean, I did take a step back, you know, I did take breaks from certain shows. There were shows that I did want to be in and shows that I didn't want to be in, shows that I was behind the scenes for and shows that I was, you know, front and center for.
Right.
And I think that there's such a lack of balance with that now, you know, because everybody wants to be on the stage. Everybody wants to be the center of attention. And so it's always those same people. And and I don't see eye to eye with that, you know, mindset. I'm always open to like new talent, you know, maybe people who wouldn't normally think to be in the spotlight. Let's see what they've got. Let's put them in the spotlight, you know. And you'll find that you can get people out of their shells and just blossom into these incredible performers, you know.
Well, some of the biggest actors we've ever had in the world are like recluse, shy.
Yes.
I know like Nick Nolte is a good example. Like he would always talk about he would literally have panic attacks when he was supposed to be acting, and it's like, and here's this great actor, like, but it's like he's scared to death to even be out there.
Exactly.
It's just crazy to me, you know. Or some of the musicians that are some of the best bands ever, best singers ever,
and best performers
and they're just terrified to be out in front of people.
Yeah.
We have a place in Oceano, which is closer to Pismo, where Valerie got married.
Okay.
But they have a place called the Melodrama. It's been around forever. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, we used to go. But it's like a vaudeville, and they do like they'll do like a play, and then they'll do like a funny vaudeville review at the end. But it's like singing and dancing, and it's like, and it's acting, and it's hilarious. And it's always a lot of fun. But when COVID hit, they closed obviously for a while. But then they tried to come back, and they're saying masks are required for everybody, including the performers.
Right.
And Bethany and I are like, you know, part of the fun of going to this is watching their facial expressions and the funny. Some of our favorite actors in these things, because you get a lot of the same guys in there. It was their facial features and the way that the faces they would make, and it was part of their character, and it was so funny. We crack up. I'm like, if they're half their faces covered, that's not going to be any fun.
No, and,
you know?
and words get muffled.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Context gets you know,
So I'm like, you know, either just don't worry about it, or just stay closed until you're ready to not worry about it. You know?
Exactly.
So with your group, did they do any of that? Like, was there masking or just the vaxes?
They wanted us to wear. So the audiences had to wear masks, and they pulled every other seat out. Now, mind you, this was like a 55-seat theater. Still is. Very small. It's theater in the round, so the stage isn't particularly large either.
Okay.
The backstage area is very small. So mostly what we do is smaller productions, although we have done massive things like Rent, like Sweeney Todd, Guys and Dolls, things of that nature. And so production lately hasn't been entirely like huge shows. I know it used to be a lot bigger of a deal, you know, 5-10 years ago. Now I don't know if they require masks, because again, it's just been so long, but I know they were requiring masks, and they wanted
for performers as well.
They wanted the performers had to be vaccinated. And I have my own thoughts about the vaccine.
Right.
But everybody had to be vaccinated if they were performing, and if they didn't get vaccinated and didn't show proof of the vaccine, then they were asked to not perform.
Right.
Because they didn't want to do the whole masking thing again, because we wanted the facial expressions and everything to come across, you know, all of the emotions, and and so that was the whole issue with that was, you know, everybody must be vaccinated if they're performing on the stage. The audience was welcome to and required to wear masks. And at one point they were talking about making everybody show vaccine cards at the door on their way in. And it's like, come on.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Like, so you mean to tell me that people are, in a sense, being discriminated against because they decided not to partake in a specific vaccine that doesn't even prevent you from getting COVID. It just makes it so that you're not going to end up in the hospital. Which even so, people who have still received, you know, every booster and everything are getting COVID and winding up dying. You know? And to me, it was too new of a technology, too new of a vaccine. It was terrifying. And so I made the decision not to get it because I was way too scared of it.
I was more scared of the vaccine than I was of COVID.
I was too.
Right.
Because I had already had COVID at that point. And yes, it was awful.
Not fun.
I mean, it's not fun.
Right.
But I got over it. I got better.
Right.
You know, I mean, I was sicker than I think I'd ever been, but I didn't die.
How early on did you get it? 2020 or?
It was 20. I didn't get it until 2021.
Okay.
So 2021, I managed to remain unscathed through like the beginning and the real peak parts of it.
When it was the worst.
Yeah, and I happened to work in healthcare at that point too. So I got very lucky, you know, being exposed to it, being around, you know, the doctors who were exposed to it, who were in ICU that were treating these people, you know, and I managed to be fine. And then, you know, 2021, when everything was starting to slowly die down, it was like, oh, now I'm sick, you know?
Right.
And then I got it again in 2022, and it wasn't so bad the second time
it's
around.
been getting weaker and weaker. And I think we've had it come through our house probably 3 or 4 times, I think, but we didn't get it. At least not that I know. See, people say things like, oh, I never had it. We didn't understand. Some people are just asymptomatic.
Exactly.
Some people are just immune to it.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it could go through your house. It's been times where the only time we've ever actually tested anybody, well, that's not true. We've tested before, but the one time Bethany got pretty sick and turned out she had it. Right. And I mean, I'm sharing a bed with her. We're around each other.
Yeah.
I never got it. As far as I know.
Exactly.
But I might get like a little sniffles, like something real mild, and your first thought, at least back then, was like, this can't be COVID.
No.
Because COVID's killing people.
Exactly.
There's no way this is COVID, but it could have been COVID,
exactly.
you know? So.
Every time I got COVID, my son was like with me, you know, when he was little, you know, still shares a bed with mommy because, you know, it's just me and him sometimes, you know, so every time that I got it, no matter how sick I got, he never got it.
Wow.
Or at least not that I know of.
Not that you know of, right.
But every time I got sick, I would test myself and be positive. And then I would test him, and he was always negative.
Interesting.
And so some people are asymptomatic, but then some people really are just
immune. And that's what I think is fascinating. I even went down to a place that was giving blood tests to see if you had the antibody because I was curious. I'm like, do I just have like an antibody against this, or did I have it and I was asymptomatic and now I've built up the antibody to fight it? So I took the test and they told me no, so you don't have it.
Wow.
I said okay, well, I just keep avoiding this.
I've also heard and read that certain blood types are immune.
I read that too.
And he's O negative.
Okay.
So
I think I am too.
So for some reason he either just didn't show symptoms or just never got sick.
Okay.
And so I've read that the O blood type people were very, very less likely to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm O negative. My mom, I think, told me I'm O negative. I don't know because I've never went to a doctor and said, can you tell me, right? But I think she said I am. And she would know, I mean, I think. But so I think that's what I am too. Because that O negative, that's like one of the, is that the one that can be given to anybody, right?
Universal blood type.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's special.
It's, so if you went and donated blood at all, they would just be banging down your door like, hey man.
That's like Will Smith, I Am Legend kind of stuff right there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I have the power to save everybody.
Yep.
So, okay. Wow, that's really cool. All right, so I like all the tangents. This is cool. But let's get back into some music stuff.
Okay.
At this point in life, do you have like a specific genre that you would say is your favorite? Or, I mean, I know we all like everything these days, but like, is there one that you're like, oh, that's my go-to?
I'm gonna say definitely 80s, but it's hard because I like so much of the 80s music.
Right.
I mean, I feel like there was so much that came out of the 80s that like not only like shaped a lot of, you know, music that as we know it, but I mean just some of the most famous performers. I mean, you have Cyndi Lauper, Prince, you know, I mean, and those are two that are just on complete different, I mean, you know, maybe for the most part same genre, but I mean just two completely different directions in terms of music, you know,
and totally unique. I don't think anybody's ever really, I mean, some of Madonna's early stuff was very Cyndi Lauper-ish, but like nobody's recreated Prince. Who sounds like Prince? Nobody
sounds like Prince.
I mean, the music he was creating and the style, nobody's done that.
Exactly, you know, and what an underrated guitar player too. Right. Completely. I mean, that man could play some guitar and you don't see that, like, you see it in some of his performances and his live things, but I mean, you know, when you're listening to the songs, you don't think like, oh yeah, that's Prince playing the guitar.
Right.
That's so cool. You know, you just hear the singing and the lyrics and everything, and
Right.
and you know that it's Prince. It's kind of the same with the female guitar player Lita Ford.
Oh yeah.
She
Yeah.
her own lyrics.
Yeah.
her
She
own,
Close Your Eyes Forever. That's her,
with
right?
Ozzy, yeah. I mean, all of the guitar in all of her albums, all of the guitar recordings, and she wrote them and recorded them all like herself. And it's just you know, you see some live performances and you're like, oh, her, you know, she's putting on a show, singing and, you know, having a nice little body and
Right.
whatever, you know.
Right.
And the guitar player is over there playing what she wrote. But when you listen to the recordings are like her playing her written music and lyrics and everything, you know. So
why would they do it? Why would they change it to make it look like that wasn't the way it was going down?
I think honestly it was for more performance, you know, just kind of the sex appeal of it. You know, you put her in a little bitty outfit and let her dance around. And
if she's holding a guitar, she's blocking part of her body.
Exactly. So, you know, sexualize her as much as possible because that's everybody's favorite thing to do is sexualize women, you know. So
well, it's not my favorite thing to do.
No, but society in general, you know, women are very sexualized. And always, in my opinion, always kind of have been.
Right.
But so yeah. So and then, you know, so I would say in general, just anything that came out of the 80s, a lot of 70s music too. So it's hard to name a genre because, you know, I like it all. I like the pop. I like the rock, you know.
Well, 80s kind of is a genre of itself. Like if anybody says 80s music, we all know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Right? It's the new wave bands. It's the you know, it's all that stuff you said.
Exactly.
Prince, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, you know, all that kind of stuff is just in there.
You know, and some just incredible lyrics came out of the 80s. I mean, just music that, you know, nobody had ever heard before.
Right.
And I think that maybe the 80s or possibly early 90s is sort of when music jumped the shark in a sense, because then it just kind of seemed to go not necessarily downhill, but like in a more like mainstream. Nobody really thought to get creative again with it anymore. And so it I guess in a sense lost its momentum, and it's still just kind of
So you're saying you think the 90s is when music started degenerating, and it's just been doing so ever since. Okay.
Because there is a lot of 90s music that I do like now, but I find myself gravitating more back towards the 80s, no matter what, you know. Whether it's just like ballads, whether it's, you know, even 80s country music, you know, it's so much better than I think anything. And I've always been such a fan of the 80s. I used to just do more of like the big hair metal bands, but now that I've branched out a little bit more, I definitely listen to all of it.
Right. That's really cool for somebody born in 94 to say that the 80s are your favorite era.
I mean, well, again, it's, you know, my mom was always really into music. I mean, and not that my dad wasn't, but, you know, he just didn't have time because he was always working and doing things. But so I can really, you know, I can really credit my music taste to my mom. And, you know, being in the car with her, listening to music with her, listening to music at the house, you know, hearing things, you know, going out with her friends. There was a bar in town that was called Mickey's, and Mickey's was a restaurant bar, and so that's how they got away with letting people in under the age of 18 before a certain time. And there was family karaoke, and so I would hear a lot of those songs that my mom liked, and the family karaoke is like a core memory because I would be like 7 or 8 years old, and I would just get up there and start singing, and I think that's also where my love of performing came from.
So you've never really been a shy person?
Never.
Okay.
Never.
That's awesome. Now, does that come more from your dad, you think, or your mom?
Probably from my dad, because my mom's very quiet, reserved.
You
know, likes to keep to herself. She's very much a loner. My dad's always been a social butterfly, always been very confident, had a lot of friends, you know. So
I was going to say, as far as music too, I remember your dad talking to me about music when I was young, because he was he was my youngest uncle. He was kind of
the cool uncle,
right?
Yeah.
And he knew the music that I was into, which kind of surprised me. But it's funny, of all the bands for me to remember him talking about, it's Ugly Kid Joe. I remember him saying, because I think I had that EP or whatever it was with the little Statue of Liberty on it, and I remember him saying something about how what did he say? Like he not that he knew them. Maybe he saw them perform some Battle of the Bands. Or, like, he saw them perform before they were anybody.
Oh, okay.
Or something. He was telling me. I don't remember the full story because I must have been like 10 years old, 12 years old. But I remember thinking that was really cool because that was back, what was that? I Hate Everything About You was the song on the radio. That was the big one. And then they covered Cats in the Cradle, of course. But, and then they went nowhere after that. Nobody ever heard about them,
those one or two hit wonder bands.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So like I love 80s too. I love I don't think there's really any. I like them all. Like you could take every decade and be like, okay, you got the classic rock, you got you got the disco and the prog rock of the 70s, and you got the 80s music. But then like 90s, and I've said this lots of times, 90s is my favorite. I think 91 is the best year ever as far as music is concerned, because that's kind of when grunge came
Nirvana,
in. Right? Nevermind came out that year. Pearl Jam 10 came out that year.
Okay.
And I kind of credit all that because my whole upbringing, I listened to nothing but rap. That's all I listened to, like from an early age, right? Isn't that? It's kind of weird, right?
That is funny.
That's all I listened to, and I was like, it was like NWA, Eazy-E, Ice
you were
Cube,
in it. You were in
gangster
it.
rap stuff,
you
right?
were in it.
And then the Bay Area stuff, like Too Short, and like some of that, and that was all my stuff. And it was funny because listening to that, being influenced, like when I was 14 years old, I was like, when I grow up, I'm gonna move to Oakland and be a pimp. These are my high ambitions, right?
Boy.
This is because I was listening to this music and thinking, okay, this guy, he's got it all. He's got the money, he's got the girls, he's got he's
cool
got
cars,
it. This guy's doing it up, man. This is what I got to do, And so it wasn't until Pearl Jam came out, and then I got all into them. And that was the first time I really gave any music that wasn't rap a chance. Because back when I was a kid, things were very cliquey. It was you were the hip hop guy, or you were into country, or you were the metalhead, or you were whatever. There was no mixing, you know. And then somewhere like around the 90s later, that's when all that started to mesh, and that's where people start saying things like, "Well, I like everything."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I used to say, I like everything but country. That's what I was saying, like around the late 90s. But then that changed because there's some country I like now too, so I can't even say that anymore. But so Pearl Jam came into play, and then I think I was about 16. Vitalogy had just come out by Pearl Jam, and my mom had gotten me tickets to see them live in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco.
Wow.
And it was me and a couple of family friends, and they just dropped us off, a bunch of teenagers away. It was the coolest thing ever.
Oh my gosh.
And it ended up being a very talked about show because during Pearl Jam's set, they came out and they sang, I think, maybe 5 songs, and Eddie Vedder's like, "Hey, I had food poisoning, I've been up all night, I'm feeling really bad, so that's it for us." And but Neil Young's here, and he's going to take over. Right at the time, see, now looking back, I'm like, dude, Neil Young, how cool. Seriously? But at the time, I was like, who? I'm here to see Pearl Jam. What Neil Young? Who's this old guy? He's gonna? Are you kidding me? So we just left. We were ticked.
We're
like, you gotta be kidding me. You played 5 songs and that's it? But so yeah, I was kind of mad, but it became a big thing because that was what started their whole beef with Ticketmaster and the whole, and then after that they've been a totally kind of different band. But what was significant about that show is that Bad Religion opened up for them. Oh, and that was the first time I'd ever really heard 90s punk rock. And from that day forward, that to this day, that's my favorite genre of music.
90s punk.
That skate punk of the 90s. Yeah, Bad Religion, Pennywise, NoFX, all that. Just like, this is my stuff.
Blink-182 is actually from Ridgecrest.
Okay.
Mark Hoppus is
from is he really originally?
Originally from Ridgecrest. It's credited, like, I think on Wikipedia as like being from Bakersfield, but he's not.
Well, they went to high school in Poway. I know that much.
Okay.
But maybe he was born in Ridgecrest.
It's my understanding that there's like some Burroughs yearbooks where he's like in it. He's in like,
really?
I think like freshman or sophomore. Like
how funny.
I'm pretty sure some of his family even still live there because there is a Hoppus family in town.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love Blink-182. Yeah. That was fun back because I used to live down in the San Diego area when they got big, and a lot of people are like, oh, sell out. It's like,
No,
shut up.
come
They're still
on.
playing funny,
Yes.
fast punk rock, whatever.
And God, pretty much anybody who's anybody has heard all the small things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yeah.
are huge.
Right.
I mean, legendary at
Right.
this point, I
Right.
think.
And I don't think they ever really sold out. I think they
I don't
still
think so
continued
either.
to make music that somebody had given me. I inherited a bunch of CDs about a year ago. I don't remember where I got this one from, but I inherited a bunch of CDs, and in there was California,
Oh, okay.
which is one of their newer. It was Tom DeLonge wasn't in the band at the point.
He was sick, wasn't he? Or
Well,
was he on hiatus?
they just had a falling out.
Oh,
So
okay.
now they're touring, and Tom's with them, and that's like the biggest thing in the world because they haven't been together for a long time.
Right.
And they got the guy from Alkaline Trio joined up with them.
Okay.
And he was on the California album, but the California album is so mature sounding. Like it's not the high school kids in a punk rock band. I mean, but it's great.
Oh,
I was
man.
just blown away. I mean, it was emotional. Like it was getting me in the feels.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is Blink 182.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, it's good. Like if you heard the Enema of the State album when Adam's song came out.
Yeah.
Right. So that was like the first song that I had ever heard
Really?
where it was really hits you.
Yes.
It was deep and it wasn't real fast. It was kind of a slow, melodic song, and the lyrics are so moving.
Oh, yeah.
So I listened to the California album, and it's like every song's like that.
Oh, wow.
It's like listening to a bunch of Adam songs all over. So it's really cool.
Would you say like it's emo in a sense, or maybe they kind of strayed away from the punk and
maybe. Although I hate that word. I
hate it too, but I mean it's such a mainstream word now.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite bands of all time is AFI, and I liked them from like the skate punk days in the '90s because they came out, and I still like their new stuff too. But whenever I say that to some of the younger people or whatever, it's like, oh, AFI, and they go, oh, you mean the emo band? I go, well, yeah, that's kind of what they became, I guess. Yes. But they're not really that. In the beginning, they were very thrashy and very, very much punk rock. But anyway, how did we get onto that? I don't remember how. 80s.
80s, yeah.
80s music. So if you had to pick like your favorite, could you pick a favorite from the 80s or like a favorite band, favorite singer?
I would definitely have to say still Billy Joel.
Oh, right. You did say Billy Joel. That's right.
It just comes right down to like he's got his earlier 70s stuff so good. But there were things that he came out with in the 80s like A Matter of Trust, I mean, you listen to that song as like a young single adult dating, trying to make your way in the world. And those lyrics just kind of like resonate with you. Like, you can't go the distance without too much resistance, Yeah. I know you have doubts, but for God's sake, don't shut me out,
Right.
Every single one of his songs just hit so deep, and just you can relate to them in such a way, Vienna is another good example, I believe that was one of his 70s hits, but you're so ambitious for a juvenile. I mean, it just...
So it means something to you.
It means something.
Like the lyrics
mean something.
Okay.
And I'm very back and forth with music. Like, sometimes I just want to bop. And then sometimes I, like, want a song where I can, like, listen to those lyrics and they just, like, hit. And very much across the board, Billy Joel has always had the bops and the incredible lyrics. And so for me, I think that ultimately he is my favorite, with a very close second being, Stevie Nicks.
Okay.
Because her solo stuff, incredible, you know, incredible. I mean,
The Edge of 17 came on in a restaurant the other day, and I'm like, oh man, this song's so awesome.
Exactly, And I mean, and she just rocks, and then, she did, something with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and she did that cover not the cover, but she did that song with Don Henley, I think those two, Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks for sure.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're going obviously beyond the, you say Billy Joel, most people are like, oh, Uptown Girl,
Yeah, but I mean, Uptown Girl is probably his most popular, but I think that, he's got way more than just Uptown Girl.
That's probably the song he hates.
Probably.
So one is that everyone wants him to play. He's like, I'm playing this song for 40 years. Leave me alone.
Exactly. Leave me alone. I hate this song.
Right. Yeah.
But then, he's Vienna, A Matter of Trust. We Didn't Start the Fire.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That one's such a fun one
that
too.
Was like that was like early 90s, I think that one came out.
I think you're right. Late 80s.
Or maybe late 80s.
I think it was late 80s because he had turned 40 and he had mentioned in like an interview that he wrote from the time he was born to, you know, turning 40, all of the things that happened in his lifetime. And so you hear about polio and you hear about Doris Day, Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn Monroe. I mean, you know, the Kennedys. So he goes through all of these, and I mean, he's just rattling off these people
in that song,
and these
you mean?
Events. Yeah. Yeah. So he just
JFK blown away. Yeah.
Exactly. So he wrote from the time he was born about all of the relevant or famous people and events that happened to, you know, when he turned 40 in 1980 something, you know. So. And
did he kind of quit after that?
I don't think he's written anything new.
Okay, that was like the last album, right?
I want to say that was probably the last album.
Okay. I wonder what happened.
You know, I think he had some struggles with cocaine and alcohol. To be honest with you, yeah. Okay. I know he's had some health issues. He was just touring with Stevie Nicks for a while. And then he had to drop out of some of the shows because of some health issues. And then he came back in on like the last leg of the tour. But it's my understanding that they like missed the whole West Coast part. And so that's what I was really looking forward to, was like, oh my God, I get to see two of my favorite ever.
Wow. And
then he wasn't even on the West Coast. And so it was like,
no, what a bummer.
Yeah, I know. So I do get to go see Stevie December 7th.
Okay.
In LA. I want to say some convention center somewhere. Or maybe some theater. I don't know. It's a big place and the tickets were expensive and I had to wait in a queue for these tickets.
Oh yeah, I bet.
You know.
I bet.
But I get to go do that, you know. I get to say in my lifetime, you know, being born in the 90s and somebody as huge as Stevie Nicks and as huge as she's always been since the 70s, you know, I get to go see her, you know, and that's like a bucket list thing for me.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
That's awesome.
So excited, yeah.
That's this coming December?
Yep. Yep, December 7th. So
are you going with friends or are you
I think I'm gonna go with my mom. I got myself a ticket and then I got an extra ticket and you know, my mom.
Yeah, is she a big fan too?
Yeah, big fan too. So I'm gonna take my mom, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Have you ever this is kind of a side thing, but have you ever heard do you ever listen to like Jim Gaffigan?
He's a comedian, right?
Yeah, his stand-up comedy. He has one where he talks about Billy Joel. He says he goes to Ireland and he's going to perform in Ireland and the sound guy goes, oh, what are you thinking of doing? He goes, oh, I was thinking I was going to open up with this. He goes, oh, I don't recommend that. Yeah. And he's like, well, why not? He goes, oh, Billy Joel tried that and it didn't go so well. And he goes, who's Billy Joel? He goes, you don't know who Billy Joel is. You know, it's like this whole thing. Yeah, exactly. That's what he says. And then he's like, oh, you mean Billy Joel? So that's what I said, Billy Joel.
Billy Joel. That's funny.
That's pretty funny.
That is funny.
Yeah, he's hilarious. He's one of my favorites. But all right. So do you? Shoot, we're all over the place. This is awesome.
We are.
Got that. Oh, this is a fun one. How about? So for me, like when I hear every once in a while, I'll hear even today, I'll hear something. A song or maybe a piece of a song or something, and it'll just blow my mind in such a way that within weeks I've gotten everything that they've put out. And sometimes they're a brand new band. It's like, oh, they only have one album. Sometimes it's like, oh wow, they've been around for 10 years. They have 4 albums. Can you think of like the last time that happened? Something similar to you, like something new that you heard that you were just like, this is fantastic.
Billie Eilish.
Okay.
Billie Eilish. I heard a song called Bad Guy that she did. And
that's kind of the one that put her on the map, right?
Yeah, and I was just like, and it's very much like a bop, you know, but then you also listen to those lyrics and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of angsty.
So then I kind of went back and I listened to some of her older stuff and it was just like beautiful. It was so pretty, you know, Ocean Eyes, 6 Feet Under, you know, and now her new stuff, Happier Than Ever. I mean, gosh, so good.
That's a song, Happier Than Ever?
Happier Than Ever. It's also the name of her newest album, Happier Than Ever.
Which is interesting because kind of her persona. I don't know a lot of her music. I don't. But whenever I see pictures of her, she just looks like she's got something wrong with her. Like she's like her eyelids are flopping up in the back of her head, and she looks sickly and demonic sometimes. And it's like, what in the world?
I think a lot of that is just a look, just a presentation. You know, she when she interviews. She talks about how she was like super self-conscious when she was younger, you know, and she's quite young. I think she's only just barely 21. Yeah. So she's very young. Right. And so she got into really writing music and stuff, I think when she was 16 or 17. And so a lot of her stuff, I mean, she didn't really have the confidence and the you know, and the I guess whatever musicians have, you know, the oomph, I guess. Right. She didn't really have that when she was younger, and so she was a little bit more reserved, and she, you know, baggy clothes and you know, green hair, and now more recently she's showing her body, and not like in like an explicit way, but she's more comfortable with herself, and she loves herself a lot more, and she's becoming more confident and exploring who she is as a person. And so, you know, she was one that very much surprised me, because I didn't think I was going to like Billie Eilish that much. And then I heard a couple of songs, and I went down a Billie Eilish rabbit hole and was like, okay, this is like my new favorite thing ever. Okay. Her, and I think Taylor Swift. Okay. Taylor Swift has a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, she does. That's one that's come up on this podcast a bit.
Yeah, really?
People are surprised that I'm a big fan also, because my daughter got me into her. My daughter's a huge fan. She had for her 22nd birthday party, she had a Taylor Swift party where everybody had a dress.
I'm feeling 22.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, so but everybody dressed from a certain era, whatever. They were like the Fearless or 1989 or whatever.
That is so fun.
It was pretty cool.
That is so fun. Yeah, no, I actually, and I don't admit it to a lot of people, but I do adore Taylor Swift, you know. Yeah. I think she's an incredible musician. Her lyrics, again, are you know, just some of those, like, those most profound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just musically, like, anybody that can write music within all those different genres, to me is worthy of respect, right? And do it well.
She's very versatile.
Because a lot of other artists try to branch out into something else, and it flops. They do an album. Oh, I'm a country guy. I'm gonna do a rock album. Yeah, that sucks. Go back to your country. Okay, that didn't sell. But she does it, and she sells albums. Exactly. She does country. She does pop. She does folksy stuff now with some of the newer stuff she's got coming out. And it's all good.
It is
in its own way.
Great, you know. And again, for her, it's like the music is amazing, but the lyrics, again, you know, super good, super great lyrics, you know.
Do you have a favorite album?
Red is good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Red's a really good one. I would have to say Red.
Okay, that's my daughter's favorite too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always go back and forth, but I like 1989 better.
1989 is good. It's great.
And she texted me that day. She goes, I forgot exactly how she worded it. She goes, no, I never realized how good 1989 was, but I mean, Red's still my favorite album. I'm not trying to say that you're right, and 1989 is the best album. But she was talking about how there's so many good songs on there, and it's like, and I prefer that genre for her as my favorite, like the poppier kind of you know, upbeat, dancey stuff. Although I like all of it, that's what I would listen to more, like that, or like on Lover, you got a lot of real kind of
Lover
upbeat,
is so good.
You know, stuff.
Lover is so good.
Yeah.
Even the song Lover itself. Like one of my favorites.
Right.
I've loved you 10 summers or something like that, or I think that's what she says. I've loved you 3 summers, and baby, I want them all, or something like that. Yeah, like just so sweet. Yeah. Those are sweet lyrics. Like, and then she also, there was another song. The lyrics of it's called "You're in Love." And that's another one that's.
What album's that on?
I want to say.
The title doesn't sound familiar to me. Although I've heard all of them, I think. That's not true. I haven't heard the newest 2 yet. I've heard some, but not all.
It's that's 1989. Oh. You Are in Love, yeah.
My favorite album, I don't even know.
I know. I thought it was 1989 for sure. You'd probably know it if you heard it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, I want to say my favorite song also from 1989 is Style.
Okay.
Style, you know.
Yeah.
Long drive could end in burning flames or paradise. Like, so good. So good. You know? Because we've all had that drive.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Right.
As young adults.
Yeah.
In our, you know, whenever. I mean, I guess I'm still considered a young adult.
Yeah.
But as young adults, you know, like those midnight drives.
Right.
Never really ended up with the best of intentions, but it was either gonna just blow up or be amazing, you know? So
Which for her, unfortunately, it seems to keep blowing up.
she really just hasn't had that great of a track record.
I thought she was going to marry this last guy she was with. They were together for like, what, 4 or 5 years or something?
I think I read 6 years or something, but they were together for a long
right.
time. You
And
know?
she did a good job of keeping that out of the media and stuff, too, which made you think, this might be the real deal.
Exactly,
You know?
and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, you know.
Yeah.
At least now we know we're going to get another, like, banger.
Right. Right, exactly. Oh, man. Maybe that's why she does it. Maybe that's her muse. Like, she needs that, you know?
It could be.
These broken relationships are what fuels her to sing about stuff, you know?
Some people need somebody in bed with them every night. And some people need to just have that, like, crush of the heartbreak in order to get their inspiration.
Yeah.
Another one that I actually really am very fond of is Selena Gomez. I love her music.
Yeah. She's gone through quite a different...
She has.
Like, she's got different styles. And
yeah, she's had different styles too. And then another one, Demi Lovato.
Okay.
But I think more, not so much the music and the lyrics, but like she's
belting.
Sing.
I always compare that to like when we used to compare back in the 90s or late 90s, I guess, early 2000s, Britney Spears to Christina Aguilera.
Yeah.
Right, Christina Aguilera
could
oh
sing.
My gosh, like
Still
just
can sing,
yes,
like, incredible.
Just pipes like nobody's
Exactly.
business. Where Britney Spears, poppy songs, whatever, but you don't listen to her and go, oh, what a voice.
Exactly.
But you hear Christina Aguilera, you're like, oh my gosh,
what a voice.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So that's what I felt about Demi Lovato, even from like the Camp Rock days, and I'd hear her singing on there. I was like, dude, she can sing.
Really truly sing. You know, and I would say, you know, if you put like Taylor and Demi and Selena together, I mean, obviously Demi is the melter, the stronger singer, you know.
Yes, for sure.
Whereas Selena, you've got, you know, she's pretty and she's got good songs. I don't think she writes any of her own music.
Probably not. Yeah.
She's, you know, very much got good, I think, music.
Right. Yeah, my older son actually showed me a little while ago, I think when it first came out, her newest album, and he goes, okay, Dad, you're not going to like the album title. You're not going to like a lot of the lyrics. It's got a lot of profanity and stuff, but listen to some of this because musically this is awesome. Yes. And he said this is a totally different style for her. It's very rocky and very like just, and I listened to some of it. I said, wow, this is really impressive.
Exactly.
But then it's just, I mean, and I'll ask you about this. Like, so you listen to that and you think, man, the talent is there. Everything's going on. But then you see her interviews and she seems like she's having a lot of mental problems.
And she's had some health issues too. I think she had to have a kidney removed.
Oh boy.
And I want to say her sister or her best friend gave her like a donor kidney.
Oh, nice.
But she's definitely got, I want to say she has lupus.
That's Selena Gomez.
Yeah, that's who we're talking about, right? Oh, who are we talking about? Demi Lovato?
Demi Lovato.
Oh, Demi Lovato. Oh, she was a heroin addict.
Right.
You know, she is absolutely going through the ringer. You know, between the drug addiction and she was with the guy who played Fez in that 70s show.
Wilmer. Yeah. I've met him before.
Yeah, and they were together for a long time too, you know, and so losing somebody that you're so, or not losing them in a sense, but no longer being with somebody that you just have that comfort with, you know, like your comfort person, you know. Right. I think that probably contributed a lot to it too. Yeah.
But even when she was going through all that, he was still really close with her, right? I mean, he was, even though they weren't together romantically, they were still really close. I think they're still really close.
I think so too. I think so too. But no, she's been through it. And it's sad because, you know, like, she's amazing.
Right. Well, a lot of people use her as kind of the poster child of the
the Disney kids,
kind
the
of, right?
child star,
the grooming
yeah.
and the being, she tells stories of being sexualized at an early age and thrown into the spotlight and saying, well, if you want to be big, you got to do these things. And, that's going to mess up anybody, really.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and more and more now you start to see like some of the Nickelodeon stars coming out of the woodwork. And I was like listening to some of these podcasts, like this show that was out in the early 2000s called Zoe 101. It was with Britney Spears' little sister Jamie Lynn Spears was the lead of the show. And these preteen teenage girls were so cliquey and were like pitting against this one of these girls in the show, and I don't remember the whole show or all of the characters or anything, but she talks about how she was just like bullied to the extent like she would get like physically ill before she would go out to shoot, And then there was one Nickelodeon producer who kind of was gross across the board to all of the kids in the show. Right. And he just kind of was like, you're going to do this or you're gone, and he was really like disgusting about it and mean about it,
see, those guys should just be lined up and shot into a pit.
I absolutely agree 1,000%
I mean,
with
I don't
that.
know why we let those people stay alive.
I don't either. It's like it's like a comment that you made on one of your podcast episodes, rapists.
Yeah.
Women and children rapists.
Yes.
There's no room for them in this world. I feel the exact same way,
Yeah.
And it's like that with those, cringy, nasty Hollywood producers that sexualize children and do the this for that quid pro quo kind of thing,
That's horrible.
And maybe the intent was to get them to do what he wanted, but the impact that it had on the kids has followed them into their adult lives and has messed them up so much that they're turning to drugs. They're shaving their head. They're they're going crazy. They're having these manic episodes. They're going back and forth from between being referred to as her, she to they, them to back to her, she. And
so I look at like Demi Lovato. I assume that's what you're talking about because she's the one I can think of that's been going back and forth. And I think like even like within the trans community, I mean, I don't know this, but I think if I was in the trans community, I'd probably be like bothered by that. I'd be like, you're making us look bad. You're like schizophrenic. You're going back and forth. Well, wait, now I'm they, now I'm him, now I'm he. It's like, well, make up your mind.
Exactly.
You're making us look like we're a bunch of lunatics.
Well, when our trans community already gets such a bad rap, for being who they are, and then having somebody like Demi go back and forth, it really does,
Right. Well, I've even read articles about how a lot of people in the gay community don't like the trans community. Or they don't like. I've even heard, and of course this isn't everybody in the community, but I'm saying there's even like some people in the gay community that don't like the bi community. They're like, make up your mind.
Yeah.
like pick a side.
I could very much see that. For me, what I still haven't been able to wrap my head around is pansexual.
I don't even know what that means. I mean, like you're attracted to Peter Pan. I mean, what does that mean?
Attracted to just.
Anybody,
just traits.
So how's that different than bisexual?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Huh.
So, it just, to me, it just doesn't make any sense, but it is very much a recognized part of the, LGBT community or sexual orientations or anything like that.
I wonder how much it takes though to get recognized in that. Like it's almost like you can come up with whatever you want and you're going to become one of the letters in that acronym.
Pretty much.
It's not going to take a whole lot of, well, let's look into this. Is this really a thing? Or no. Oh, you say you're that? Okay.
Exactly. I mean, and then there are people who identify like, oh, I'm a cat.
Right.
And then I'm a this or I'm a that,
They call them furries.
Yeah. And then it just gets weird.
Right.
I mean, and I've gone down these rabbit holes, and I mean, like, furries are weird. They have whole, like, I think, like, the weirdest furry type thing is My Little Pony. and it's a community of grown men.
Oh, Bronies?
Bronies.
Oh, yeah.
And
not that I would know that is.
That weirds me out.
Yeah.
For me, that's like...
Yeah.
Because it is very much a show...
For little girls.
And then you have these grown men
right.
who are like... just as into it. And, to me, I would be afraid of, if I had a little girl, taking my daughter out to a My Little Pony thing or whatever, and then seeing this group of grown, weird men, that are all decked out and whatever, so bronies bother me.
Right.
And I've had friends who have been like, yeah, I'm a brony.
Right.
And I'm like...
You're like, well, we were friends.
We were friends, and now I'm not so cool with that,
Well, I know even when my kids were younger, and this is probably not the extent of what you're referring to, these grown men, but there was a group of teenage boys that were they were calling themselves that just because they liked the show, right? And it was almost like this stereotypical gender thing where it was like, oh, if you're a boy, you're not allowed to like My Little Ponies. Right. Girls can't like G.I. Joe or whatever, right? We always throw that out there, and it's like, well, that's not always true, But
and that's the thing is like I'm open to kids liking what they like. I mean, my son is very much a little boy, but sometimes he'll ask me to turn Frozen on or Moana or he really likes I think it's called Doc McStuffins.
Oh yeah,
he's liked that show before, too.
That's a good show.
But he's also like very much Star Wars and the Avengers and Hot Wheels and all that, but I don't tell him that he can't watch the other stuff because he's a boy.
Right. I wouldn't either.
He's 4.
Right.
He barely knows the difference between boy and girl.
Right.
I think in his mind, boys have short hair and girls have long hair.
Right.
But then he sees boys with long hair and,
or girls with pixie cuts or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let me throw a hardball at you then. So what if he came to you and he said he wanted to wear a dress at 4 years old? What would you do in that situation? Would you draw the line there, or would you be like, oh, he's only 4, who cares?
That's tough because a part of me does want to let my son, become who he is going to be without forcing anything down his throat. Sure. But then at the same time, he's my little boy. You know, he runs around in shorts and t-shirts and that's little boys.
Right.
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't knock somebody else if they did it. That's their child. It's not my business. If they want to give their child that freedom, absolutely. Like my son does have a pink and purple dollhouse that he likes to play with.
Right.
Granted, he uses his little like stormtrooper Legos to play in it, but he does have a dollhouse.
Yeah, the stormtroopers came across this vast mansion. They're like, hey, let's set up shop in here.
Pretty much.
This is better than the bunker we've been living in down here.
Exactly.
So, oh man.
So I don't tell him no, but I don't think I would necessarily let him, wear that.
What if he came to you and said that he was a girl?
At the age of 4?
Yeah. That's why I'm asking for 4.
I think
it's important
because he's 4.
If he was 16, you'd probably have a totally different conversation with him.
Absolutely. Right. It would be a much different conversation, but he's 4. He doesn't have any sense of who he is yet. He doesn't have any sense of the way things are, and so if he did that, I would just, you're so cute, you know, just that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I don't understand and what I don't agree with is these parents that are such LGBTQ supporter allies that they tell their kids, oh, but it's okay if you want to be this.
Right. Because then they plant the seed.
At that point, it's planting the seed. And then at that point, you have these kids who are like, oh, I think I want to be male instead of female, or I think I want to identify as non-binary.
Right.
Even though this kid is 11, 12 years old, hasn't even hit puberty yet, doesn't know, doesn't even
know what any of that is.
Doesn't know what any of that is, but the parents have planted the seed and have shoved it down their throat so much that it's just like these kids feel like they almost have to identify as something other than what they were born as.
Right.
And in a sense, to me, it's almost grooming their kids.
Right. Which my question is always like, why? Like there's You can be a parent who's like you're saying, you could be totally okay with if your 16-year-old comes and says, "Hey, I'm transgender.
Exactly.
I'm actually a girl in a boy's body." Right? Then you would treat that as okay. Well, let's address that.
Exactly.
But you have these parents that almost force it on their kids, right?
Yes.
It's like, oh, you like your sister's dress? Let's put it on you every day.
Yeah, and I completely disagree with
Right.
that. I think that's doing a disservice to kids.
Right.
Because you're not letting them be a kid. You're not letting them grow and develop and figure out who they are and develop in their own way. You're turning them into what you want them.
You want them.
Yeah. And even if it is a subconscious thing, even if you don't mean like, well, I didn't mean for my kid to be this or that. No, but by doing that, you absolutely did mean to do that. And you absolutely did turn your child into that.
Right. Right. And most likely when they get to a certain age, they're going to grow out of that.
Exactly.
And then, but they've got all this mental damage now because you forced that on them. And I guess that's what I was getting to is like, I'm wondering, like, again, I understand the parent who, when their 16-year-old comes and says that, they say, okay, I'm accepting of that. And that's all good and fine. But like, what about the parents that are like, I just lost it again. See, this is why it's good I can take this stuff out. That's what I was saying. So the parents, that, like, what are they hoping to gain? Like when their 4-year-old comes to them and says, "Mommy, I want to be a girl," and they say, "Okay, well, you're a girl then. Let's pretend you're a girl. Let's put on. You're going to wear dresses from now on. We're going to braid your hair. We're going to make you look like a girl." Now, why are there so many parents that are doing that? Like, what are they getting out of that? Is it the fame? Is it almost a famous thing? Like, oh, maybe I'll be one of these moms that's on TV. Oh, and I'll be on a reality show all about, raising my son as a girl or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point it's probably, a way to get attention. Very much a way to be the center of attention. Maybe people think, oh, well, like, that's just such an open-minded and an amazing parent, and they're just so great and so loving and accepting, but realistically, it is absolutely doing a disservice to that child.
Right. So they're sacrificing their children for something that they want.
Exactly. Basically. Which is not fair to the child because it's a child. Right. It's an innocent. As far as I'm concerned, up until they're like 5 or 6 years old, to me, they're still very much babies. Right. Because they still have so many baby characteristics. And so, and that's another thing that I don't like is when the moms have these little girls and they get them dressed up for these pageants and these competitions and they slap makeup on them and bathing suit contests and these pageant dresses. It's disgusting.
Yeah, all for perverted old men to stare at them. Yeah.
Disgusting, and these moms are so competitive and they take it so seriously. Right. And it's like, it's not for it's not doing anything for the children other than like completely like damaging them in my opinion. It's all has to do with the mom. It all has to do with the attention, the notoriety, whatever cliques that they run in, they're going to be the most popular one. And I just completely disagree with that whole, pageant competition thing. It's just disgusting to me.
Right. So you're totally, I guess I didn't ask you this to begin with, but you seem to sound like you're totally fine with the trans community.
Absolutely.
Like
I have some close friends and family who are trans,
But you just draw the line with children.
I draw
like young children.
Yes, I draw the line with young children, and it's because, and I don't want to say names and I don't want to give specifics, but there is a person that I know who did this to their now 15-year-old daughter. Okay. And this person, shoved it down their child's throat so much that now their child, is very confused about their life, is very confused with authority, like authority coming from parents and everything because,
right.
Again, I don't want to put specifics in, but,
Right, yeah, and then there's no reason to do that. I mean, we're talking about concepts, not about people in general. So, exactly. I mean, just in general. So, yeah. So you're seeing in your own life the repercussions of this.
I am, and it's it's eye-opening. Because as I said, I am very much an ally and supporter of the trans community, the gay community, all of the above. But when it comes to parents shoving it down their child's throat so much to the point where the kid either goes back and forth or the kid is so confused about everything in their life that they don't know what's right and what's wrong, you know?
Well, I mean, then that's all of us really to an extent of what we think we know at a certain age. 3 years down the line, I'm talking about as we're kids.
Right.
3 years down the line, we don't think that anymore.
Exactly.
We know something else now. And then 3 more years, we know something else now. And that continues. And they say the male brain doesn't fully develop to like 25, 26 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So it's like, you know, that's why I was telling my kids about like things like tattoos. Oh, I want to get a tattoo. I said, well, you better be sure it's something you're going to like forever.
Yeah.
Because that's permanent, right? It's like, oh, this is my favorite band. I'm going to get, 2 years, you're going to hate that band. Right? Because I know all these people that are like, oh, that's my favorite band. Well, then the lead singer gets busted for like rape or something. And now they hate that band. And they want nothing. But here it is on your forearm, just like big as day. You know, it's like,
and
come on.
everybody knows the dirty thing that person did.
And they say, like, oh, you like that band? Don't you know that guy raped like 4 women? What's the matter with you?
Now you're a piece of crap, you know?
Exactly. So I'm like, you better be real sure. So I'm like, if it's something like one of your kids' names or something, it's like, that's always going to be your kid, no matter what. Like, you know, I mean, that's one thing. But we just go through so many phases in life where it's like, in the moment, it's all about this. This is all that matters. And you try to tell them, well, that might not always be what matters. Oh, yes, it will. Oh, yes, it will. Okay. You know, you just got to let them learn themselves. But, you know, I mean, I think that's all kids. We all go through that. So when a young child says something like, I think I'm a boy, I think I'm a girl, you know, I'm not saying that you should say, don't be stupid, shut up, you moron, something like that. But I also don't think you should go the other direction and say, oh, let's start treating you that way then.
Exactly.
At that age, you know, if they're old enough. Yeah.
They're so young, you know?
Right.
I mean, if it's like you said, if it's like a 16-year-old.
Right.
Perfectly reasonable to sit down and discuss that.
Right.
If it's my 4-year-old coming up to me, it's like, I'm a girl, mommy. Like, okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
I'm not gonna. Yeah. I'm not gonna discourage him and tell him, you know, no way, Jose.
Yeah.
But I'm also not gonna be like, well, here's a dress and some pigtails and you know, pink shoes and.
It's no different than him coming up and saying, I'm a dinosaur today. Rawr! You know, you're not gonna like start treating him like a dinosaur. No. You know, at least, I mean, you might have some fun with it, but I mean, you're not gonna like seriously start treating him like a dinosaur. Yeah. So I mean, is there a certain age? So let's talk about things like puberty blockers and some of those surgeries that they do.
They're doing it. Oh wait, that's a thing.
Surgeries.
So surgeries I know of for like adults, but puberty blockers.
Puberty blockers. You've never heard of puberty blockers?
No.
Oh yeah, it's a big fight right now. There's a lot going on where they're trying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are saying that parents aren't allowed to know, yeah, they're saying, because what they're saying is if your 12-year-old comes to you and says they're transgender, let's say, and let's say it's a little boy, and he says, I'm a girl on the inside. And let's say his parents don't believe in that. And they say, well, no. And they say, no, mommy, you have to call me she. You have to call me her. And the mom's like, no, you're my son. I'm going to call you him. I'm going to call you he. Well, then the authorities get involved, and then the parents start losing rights, and all this kind of stuff is happening, right? And then the whole thing is they want to get them on puberty blockers so that they don't start, like if you're a little boy who says he's a girl, then you don't want to start, your voice starts getting deeper when you're 13, 14, 15, you start, you start developing, or if it's the other way, if you're a girl, you're going to start growing breasts, you're going to start, starting to look like a young woman, so you get the puberty blockers to stop that from happening. And there's a fight going on because some people say, oh, it's totally reversible. It's totally reversible. If they decide they don't want to go that route, you just take them off them and then they develop like normal. And there's the other side that says that's bullcrap. There's studies that show that that's not true. It is not reversible. In fact, there was even one interview I saw with a transgender. I always get my terms wrong, and I hate that I do this. I have to figure out. So it's a born female who has transitioned into a man. So that's a trans man, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a trans man, and I want to say in the 40s maybe at this point, is speaking out against all this because they're like, no, this is garbage.
Yeah.
I did that. He says, I did this as an adult. I went through this, and I'm regretting it. It is not reversible.
Oh my
he says,
God.
I cannot reverse this, even though I want to.
Oh my gosh.
It's impossible. He said, I will never be a man, ever.
Right.
I'm attempting to look like a man, but I will never be a man.
Right.
You know, and now I'm having all these health problems. They're like, I'm probably not going to survive another 3 or 4 years. Like I've already had like 10 surgeries in the last 2 years, like all this stuff, right? Yeah. So it's just a big old mess.
And so they're trying to push it on the kids.
Well,
for the puberty blockers.
That's what I'm seeing. There's a whole other side of this where they would say that's a bunch of crap that's been invented. Nobody's pushing it on kids. This is so stupid. But then there's been people that have gone in undercover and called some of these places, and I've heard the audio. They'll call and they'll pretend to be a parent. Hey, my 13-year-old son is transgender. We're looking into puberty blockers. We're looking at maybe some surgery down the line. What would we need to do to get into your clinic, right? Like totally undercover. And they're like, oh, well, this is all you. And they start signing them up. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, really?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like
so
that, I totally think that is, it goes right along with grooming.
Right.
It goes right along with grooming, you know,
Right.
because not only that, but it is blocking the natural human development.
Right.
And it would not surprise me if there were major health issues down the line, whether it's reproductive health or developmental health, you know, heart health,
right,
anything like that.
Right.
Because you have this grown adult heart and this body that isn't fully developed.
Yes.
I mean, they're not going to grow tall. They're not going to, you know.
Right.
So.
Right.
So you've got this giant heart in this little body. That just sounds like people are going to start dying.
Right. And it's such a new thing that we don't really have any long studies on it.
Yeah, we don't know.
So how can we really know what's going to look like 10, 20, 30 years down the line?
So then why would anybody think that this is a good idea and subject their kids to this?
Well, these surgeries and puberty blockers are pretty pricey. So there's always that.
Yeah.
It's always that ka-ching, right?
I mean, hey,
we can make some money here, you know.
Whatever it takes for the money and the attention again and the notoriety, you know.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think at that point too, it is more just the parents wanting that attention.
Oh, totally.
Versus, you know, the child saying, "Oh, I think I'm this or I think I'm that." You know. That,
right.
I really don't think that I've seen it. And I've seen it go back and forth. I really don't think that a person knows that they're truly transgender until they're much older.
I agree.
You know, 16, 17, something, you know.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just it doesn't make any sense.
Well, because statistics prove that. Because you look at, for the vast majority of kids under 13 that make that proclamation, I want to say, I wish I had like actual numbers in front of me, but it's pretty high. 80-90% of them, by the time they hit adulthood, have totally gone back on that.
Absolutely.
They no longer claim to be trans. They live their lives as the gender they were born as, and there you go.
Exactly.
So that's why things like trying to mess with that at an early age is scary, because you're going to have all these adults that are like, oh crap, what did I do? I made a decision when I was too young and intelligent and mature to make this mature decision. That's a mature decision.
It is a very mature decision.
You know what I'm saying? So
it is a very mature decision, you know, and I don't want to be that person, but I almost think that there should maybe down the line be a little bit more control with it, you know. Maybe not necessarily making things illegal, but making these not letting a person that's female take testosterone medication until they're a certain age, you know.
Right.
Just putting you know, those type of limitations on it, so that you're not going and getting your 16-year-old daughter testosterone pills to start with the transition when they turn 20 and they decide, I want to be a woman, you know?
Yeah, how can you not drink a beer until you're 21, but you can get a surgery to change your gender?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
I know,
it doesn't make any sense.
So crazy.
I really think that some limitations should be, you know, set.
Right.
Again, not necessarily making it illegal in a sense, but you know, very much when they become a certain age and they're certain that this is what they want for the rest of their life and how they want to live their life, then absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, at least if it's 18 or above, even if they decide at 25, 26 that was a mistake, at least at that point it was their mistake.
Yes.
Right? No different than, like, you can't get a tattoo unless you're 18 or over.
Exactly.
But if you get a tattoo, like that, I'm sure you've seen that, that picture cracks me up, where the guy get the tattoo, it says no regrets.
Yes.
You know, like something like that, you know? Hey, that's on you, man.
Absolutely.
You did that to yourself. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, you got to live with it, but that was your decision.
Your mistake, your decision.
Exactly.
You know,
and we all have that. We all have decisions we've made that we wish we could go back and do something different. And
that's life, though.
It's life, right.
Yeah,
but at least if you're 18 or over, it's like, it's on you. If you're under than that, it's your parents or whoever's allowing you to do that.
Exactly.
You know? So, it's just, so I'm with you. My main beef with that whole thing is the kids, is the underage, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to allow, the fact that they're excluding parents, which I think is a big no-no.
Big no-no.
Yeah, I'm like, look, but they're like, oh, but it's abuse for the kid if the parents won't go along with the transgenderism of their child.
Yeah, but, you know, we also come from a generation where we were still spanked as kids, and now if you spank a kid,
it's child abuse.
It's child abuse.
Right, exactly.
You know? I just think, I mean, I'm very much protect all children, but let's protect our children from that too.
Right.
Let's protect our children from being able to be 12 years old, walk into a clinic and say, I don't want my parents to know, but I'm transgender.
Right.
Because when they're 22 and they regret every decision and their parents were trying to make them see reason.
Right.
Because there's a difference between being abusive and being, you know, narcissistic and being, you know, holding somebody back versus I'm trying to make you see reason. Right. I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to give you the tools and trying to make you see why this isn't a good idea yet, you know? And if in 10 years you decide you still feel the same way, absolutely, I was wrong, I will eat my words.
Right.
But in those instances when they're these kids, it's not okay. Right. It's not okay for doctors and for the law to step in and say, oh, well, this is child abuse if you don't let your kid go to the doctor by themselves and get these, you know, get these hormones.
Right. Well, it started, I think, back in, and maybe this is the same, I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but I mean, there were some, this is years ago, but there were some instances where like a 14-year-old girl got pregnant. And didn't want to tell the parents because she knew her parents would be mad at her. And then somebody from the school, whether a guidance counselor, was able to take her down to a Planned Parenthood, get her an abortion without the parents never even knew about it.
Jeez.
So I mean, that doesn't even. I mean, I'm not trying to open up. That's a whole different discussion.
Right,
but I mean, the concept of excluding the parents from the knowledge of something that big in your child's life, that's not the teacher's job.
No, it's
your job is to guide my child, not lead them and not tell me what's happening in their own lives, you know.
Because then that puts it in the child's mind like, well, anything that I do that is trouble or that I shouldn't be doing, I can just go see this teacher and I can be out of it.
Exactly.
And it's fine. And my parents will never have to know. And I will always in my parents' eyes be this perfect child.
Right.
When in reality I'm a menace to society.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I'm on your side with that.
Okay.
I would say I don't think it's any right of any teacher.
Right.
At all.
Right.
At all.
Yeah, because I mean their argument would be, oh, but the parents are going to be really mad. There could be abuse.
Right.
Well, if there's abuse, then you deal with that, right?
You deal with the abuse part of it.
You fix that. If the child comes back and says, hey, I told my dad he beat the crap out of me last night. Here's my black eye. Here's my bloody nose to prove it.
Exactly.
Then you get CPS involved. You get in. I mean, obviously, that's not okay either.
No, but that's more beneficial to the well-being of the child than it is to, you know, say, oh, let's go take you to get an abortion.
Right.
Oh, my God.
Right.
You know?
At 14.
Yeah.
Right.
And not tell your parents about it at all,
right.
you know, and just pretend like you're sick for a few days.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Well, I was reading something one time, or was it a video? I don't remember which, but it was a story just like that, and it wasn't until way later in life where I want to say, not way later, but I think the girl was now married. She's like 24, 25 or something, and it was showing. She was telling her parents that this had happened when she was 14. And the dad just lost, like, he not angry. He just started crying, and he's just like so upset. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, like,
because
I cannot
when
believe.
that does come out, like, how does that make you feel as a parent? Like, you all of a sudden learn that your child was so afraid to come to you with this life-changing information, and you feel like, where did I go wrong?
Right.
Where did I mess up so bad that my own baby was afraid to come to me with this, you know, when we could have fixed it together. We could have made it work, or we could have, you know, if people are pro-abortion, we could have gone and done this. Or if we are anti-abortion, then we could have gone and you know, put the child up for adoption when it was born, you know. It's such...
At least the parents would have been involved in that case. But I think that's the argument. Like, let's say they grew up in a very religious home where the parents are... Let's say the parents are not just pro-life, but they're like... I mean, they're doing the marches. They're very, very pro-life. Like, abortion's never okay, ever, in any circumstance. And then you're a 14-year-old girl, you get pregnant, and you know your parents are this way. You think, if I go to them, I'm having this baby.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way around it. Right? So they're scared to death. They're like... So, I mean, I understand that, but I still don't think that it's right for the guidance counselor to say, oh, I'll take you down.
No, at that point, at that point, it's not appropriate, no matter what. I mean, and that ultimately, that is, I think, still very much between the parents and that child. And it's not going to be easy for anybody in that specific circumstance, but it's not like the kid didn't know. Unless it was a rape situation, it's not like the kid didn't know what was going to happen after having unprotected, you know, unprotected intercourse. That's the reality of it.
Or even in a rape situation, even if that's even more reason why the parents should be involved, right?
Absolutely.
Because if it was me, I'd be like, who is he?
Yeah, because we're going, like, he's going to disappear.
Something's going to happen here. Yeah, we're not. This guy's not just going to get away with that like nothing happened.
No.
So, wow.
Yeah, but and I've heard of people who have been so pro-life and they're raped.
Right.
And then they keep their babies. And for me, that, because I don't necessarily believe in abortion. But if I'm raped and I become pregnant, I think at that point I would consider abortion.
Over adoption.
Over adoption.
Okay.
But if it was one of those things where I felt guilty or I felt, you know, whatever. I mean, I guess I couldn't speak on it because I've never been in the situation and I don't know the mental state that those people are in at the time. But as somebody from the outside looking in, I feel like I would be more towards the abortion part of it and say, look, I'm just gonna wash my hands of this, pretend like it never happened so that I don't have to think about the disgusting thing that I went through.
Is that more like, because I've heard the stories, like it'd be like if you give birth to the son, let's say, and he looks just like his dad.
Yeah.
And every time you look at him, you remember.
Look into the eyes of your rapist.
Exactly.
Yes.
So even though it's not really the kid's fault,
right.
Kid could be a great kid.
Exactly.
Best kid in the world.
Exactly.
But he looks just like his dad who did something horrible.
And it's traumatizing for the victim.
Right.
And that's kind of where I see that too. And in terms of adoption, that part would be hard for me because as somebody who has been pregnant and who did bond with because as mothers do, you know, we tend to bond while the baby is in the tummy, you know?
Totally.
And so knowing that you just naturally develop that bond with the child and then giving it up, you have that fight of like, that was my baby. But if I had kept that baby, if I had, you know, continued to be that baby's mom, I would just be living every day that trauma that I went through.
Right.
And so that for me is where I would be hesitant to even put that child up for adoption.
Right.
But across the board, otherwise, you know, I think I'm personally not a fan of abortions.
So would you say then that you're pro-life other than the case of rape and
other
incest?
than the case of rape, yes.
Okay.
Now the caveat to that is that I also don't necessarily think that abortions should be illegal.
Okay.
Because making abortions illegal means that people are going to go have illegal abortions, and that is the potential to mutilate or potentially kill a woman.
Right.
And so for me, I would never personally do it, and I don't believe it unless, the circumstances were, rape. But I also don't want to know that abortion is illegal and my friend made a decision to go get an abortion and now she's dead because she had to go get an illegal abortion and it got botched and she bled out or something, So I don't think they should be illegal. I think everybody should be entitled to do whatever they feel that they want to do with their own body, because somebody else's body is not necessarily my business.
Right.
But for me personally, I couldn't, unless it was under the circumstances of getting pregnant after being raped.
Right.
I couldn't go through with an abortion.
So that's your personal belief
My
that
personal
you keep
belief.
to yourself, as far as you just apply it to yourself.
Yes.
But if you have a friend who's had, let's say they've had 5 abortions.
Yeah.
Let's say they keep having one night stands and they just keep having abortions. Do you have any problem with that at all? Or are you just like,
see, I mean,
each his own? Or?
I disagree with it, but at the same time, it's very much like to each his own, But at that point, you should be a little bit smarter with your escapades.
Right.
I mean, you should know better,
Right.
There are plenty of non-hormonal ways to prevent pregnancy.
Right.
And it's a hot topic for a lot of people, because a lot of people are just so like, it's my body, my choice, and my this and my that. But I think it's in a sense to each his own. But if I had a friend who did have 5, 6, however many abortions just because they were being completely irresponsible, I think I would at that point just wash my hands of that person.
Okay.
Thanks but no thanks. Keep a distance.
Right.
Always, support and be supportive and all of that, but I wouldn't want to associate with, because there are ways, there are ways to make that not happen,
Right.
And everybody makes the excuse of like, well, it doesn't feel the same with a condom. And it's like, okay, maybe not, but I'd sacrifice that over bringing an unwanted child into the world.
Exactly.
All the way.
Yeah, because otherwise it's a very selfish statement to make.
Yes.
It's like, well, no, my sex life is going to suffer. So we're just going to keep doing it this way. It's like, and then what?
And then what? You're just going to go keep,
Right. Right.
And potentially, and I imagine, I don't know the process, but I imagine you can only do so many of those before you wreck everything down there,
sure. Yeah.
So,
Right.
Definitely, to each their own. It's not for me, but if somebody wants to do it, or if somebody feels like they have to do it,
right,
cool.
Yeah.
But just remember that it's 2023, and there are plenty of contraceptive items, whether it's birth control, whether it's, condoms, anything.
Right.
There's plenty out there.
Right.
And at that point, it's very much your responsibility.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Would you consider abortion to be like when an abortion takes place, do you see that as the killing of a life, or do you see it as it's not a life yet, depending on how early the abortion takes place? Or?
I think it depends on how early the abortion takes place, because there are places who will do an abortion at like 6 or 8 months along.
Right.
And that child very much has facial features and a heartbeat and functioning lungs, and they can hear you, versus if you're 1 or 2 weeks along and your baby still looks like a tadpole jelly bean.
Right.
I think at that point,
you don't think that it becomes a life at that point?
Right.
Okay, so it's farther on, like 2-3 months down.
That's when I'm like that's kind of taking a life away, you know, because there's a heartbeat, and there's the baby can hear, and in utero,
sure,
when the ears and stuff and the brain start to develop. But
then they start bonding with the mom, like you just said. Yeah.
Exactly, and then and then it becomes it just doesn't sit right with me at that point, I don't. That's my own personal thing.
So are you more like? Would you say that you're against abortions past that point, or do you still hold, like, at the point where you would say life happens, then you would say that's an actual killing of the baby? Would you say that you're still to each his own as far as that, or are you more on that side of it? You're like, well, no, I don't think this is right ever, other than rape and sex.
I mean, I still, I mean, it's a person's life and body, and what they choose to do with it is not my business, because it doesn't affect me or my life typically, and it's not my body and it's not my choice.
Right.
But I really just have an issue with these women being like, oh yeah, I'm, halfway through this pregnancy, but I think I'm just done.
Right.
Like, that's wrong to me. That is wrong. That essentially murder.
Okay.
Personally. But when there's no heartbeat, there's no anything, and it's just a tiny itty bitty, I mean, barely a cell.
Right.
At that point, like, okay. Fine. I mean, there was no conscious, there was not enough brain development for that child to know, or for the baby to hear things and the baby to bond with mom the same way, because when a baby is born and they hear they're first placed on their mommy's chest, and they get that heartbeat, and they get the sound of their mother's voice, that is their comfort.
Right.
Because inside, that's all they knew. That's all they heard.
Right.
And so it became their home, their happy place, their comfort.
Right.
And whenever that child has heard that from their mom and has developed that bond, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
I mean, and obviously, I don't want to think about if a baby suffers during an abortion.
Right.
But if the baby hasn't had a bond, doesn't have the brain development, doesn't have the ears, doesn't even barely have a heartbeat, there's no bond, there's no conscious, there's no understanding, there's not enough development there for it to be like, yes, that is wrong. For me, when it's that early, and the it's not even a baby, it's a fetus or whatever, it doesn't, it's wrong. I wouldn't morally or personally do it, but I can see it being like, well, we're not exactly ending a life because there was no conscious to begin with. There was no brain there yet. There was no hearing yet. There was no bond yet with mom.
Right.
So
yeah, I think that's the biggest and really the only question that matters when we're talking about the abortion debate is when does life begin?
Yes.
Because that's really all that matters, because a lot of the pro-life people will say, well, it begins at sperm to egg. And then there's others that will say, 3 months. Or I had somebody on this podcast that said first breath. So, I mean, then you're talking 8-9 months at that point, right? So, I mean, and everybody has a different place where they put that marker. But ultimately, that's kind of what it all comes down to, because we can say, do you believe in murdering your babies? That's a dumb question to ask, because for most people that are pro-choice, they don't think it is murdering babies. They think it's they think it's happening before wherever they put that marker of where life begins. So if you think life begins at 4 months, and then you end the pregnancy at 2 months, then that's not murder.
No.
If that's true, right?
Right.
But from the pro-life, if they say, nope, sperm to egg, then any moment from then on, they think it is murder, right? So that's where the kind of the clash comes in. So when you say, when you're talking about that certain area where you wouldn't do it yourself, but you think it's kind of wrong, you're talking about the 6, 7, 8 months down the road, and you hold to the my body, my choice kind of mantra. Do you think that still also stands at that point? Like if a mother 8 months pregnant wanted to get an abortion and she said, my body, my choice, you have no right to tell me what I can do with whether or not I abort my baby or not.
If a baby is born at 8 months, the baby can survive. It will need to spend some time in the NICU, but the baby can survive.
Right. Well, a 2-year-old can't survive on its own.
No.
It needs some adult to help it, feed it, take care of it, clothe it,
just going that far into a pregnancy and then just up and deciding, this ain't for me.
Right. This morning sickness sucks. Let's get rid of this.
I get it, but it's temporary, you know? I mean, it's going to go away. It's going to be fine after you have the baby. I think at that point, if you're that far along, it's wrong to abort.
Okay.
If you don't want that child, do the birth thing and put it up for adoption.
Yeah.
Give that baby a chance.
Right.
Give that baby to somebody
who can't have kids.
Can't have that kid, but really, really, really desperately, deeply wants kids.
Absolutely.
Just
because there's a lot of those, and that's heartbreaking too. And you see all these moms and dads that can't have children.
No, and they want it so bad, and they're so desperate to be parents, and they spend tens of thousands of dollars on IVF treatments, you know, only to have it just be a waste. And then you read these articles or hear these stories about these mothers who decided, you know, oh, I'm 34 weeks pregnant and I suddenly don't want this baby anymore. So abortion time.
Right.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That is disgusting.
Yeah.
Like at that point, that's a whole baby.
Right.
That is a whole baby. You could birth at 34 weeks and that baby will survive.
Right.
That baby will live.
Yeah.
Whereas if you birth a baby at 18, 19 weeks, that baby's not going to live.
Yeah, right.
Not to say that I still believe that, you know, particular part of pregnancy is a good part to abort because, again, I'm of the understanding, like, well, when the baby starts to hear and starts to, you know, develop those functions and the familiarity and the bond with mommy, then that for me is when it's wrong.
Right.
When I wouldn't, you know, no thanks. But to have it be just like a whole baby. All that baby's fully developed. All it needs to do is gain some weight and lung development.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
But you mean to tell me that you've just decided that you don't want to go through with it anymore, so that's it?
Right. Or there's been cases, I know that these are probably few and far between, but there has been cases where like the mother ends up breaking up with the dad and she's 7 months pregnant and let's say the dad cheated on her and now he's with this other girl, but he's still really excited about the baby. So she's like, oh yeah?
Ew.
I'm going to get back at you by getting rid of your baby.
I don't like that.
Do you see what I'm saying? Oh, I don't either.
That's selfish.
Right.
To me, that's...
It's like revenge abortion.
Yeah.
You know? So that's not good.
That should be like... I don't know.
Yeah.
Not to say, you know, what should be right and what should be wrong, because ultimately who really knows, you know, in that instance. But I feel like if it's to punish somebody else, like revenge, that should be like
selfish motives.
Go to jail.
Yeah, but I mean, I would always think to myself, I can't imagine like doing that. There's a story in the Bible about these two women. You may have heard this as a very famous story with King Solomon. And these two women both gave birth at the same time, so their babies were the same age. And in the middle of the night, one of the babies died. So the mom whose baby died got up and switched the two babies and put the live baby next to her breast and the dead one. So then the mom woke up and her baby was dead, but she knew it wasn't her baby. So they take this before the King Solomon, and King Solomon says, he goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. Take the live baby, we're going to cut it in half, and give half to each mother. That way there's no fighting. Now hang on, this is very wise. So one of the mothers, whose real baby died, said, good, let's do that. Then we'll both be safe. The mother who knew that was her baby that was living said, no, don't do that. Just give the baby to her. So she would rather keep her baby alive because and he says, give the baby to her. That's the child's real mother.
Yes.
That's how he found out because like she doesn't want to. No. She'd rather have this other lady raise her baby than kill it.
Right.
Right. So it's just you know, you kind of get that sense, and I'm like. So that's why it's hard to believe that.
It is.
You know.
It very much is. And then there are instances where there are women who get married and get pregnant and have kids, and then something happens.
Right.
And all of a sudden, every motherly instinct that was ever in their body is gone. And they don't want to be a mom anymore.
Right.
They take off and they run.
Yeah.
And they
happens in postpartum depression, that kind of stuff, for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. But I don't know. There's just something about, like, every instinct in me as a mother says, like, protect.
Right.
You know?
It's inherent in you. It's
is.
natural.
It is,
right.
you know? And so it just, whenever people are like, yeah, abortion at 6 months, or yeah, let's cut the, like that Bible story, let's cut the baby in half, you know? I would much rather...
Yeah.
Like, take this live baby.
Yes.
You want this baby so bad. Just give this kid a chance.
Exactly,
you know?
right.
Like, I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
Right.
It's just...
Yeah, but it showed that the one mom didn't care because she knew it wasn't her actual baby.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, it's not my kid. Yeah, cut him in half because I'm so mad that my baby died, so I want hers to be dead too.
Doesn't mean you get to punish somebody else.
I agree.
You know?
But that's just sadly, that's kind of the mindset of some people, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't be that way, even if it was not my kid. I'd be like, no, I don't want to kill your kid.
Exactly. Absolutely
no
not.
thanks. That's never an option for me. So.
And because, again, it's not just with your own kids, but like if I'm at the park with my son, I'm keeping an eye on my son, but like I'm also watching the other kids.
Right.
Just because, like, I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I knew that something happened to some other little kid there.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
On my watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just... and before I became a mom, I could, like, really care less about kids. Like, they were just kids, you know? I mean, I would never let anything happen to a kid.
Sure.
But it didn't dawn on me, you know? The thought never crossed my mind. And now I'm just like... protect all of the babies.
Yeah.
Make sure all of the babies are okay.
Yeah, because your psyche changes, I think, when you become a parent.
It very much does. Yeah. And I didn't even want to be a mom. I didn't want kids. I didn't want.
Oh, okay.
You know, I didn't want anything.
It was a surprise.
It was like whoopsies.
Right.
You know, and now I couldn't imagine my life without my son in it. You know, I mean, he's saved me from things that I didn't know I needed to be saved from, and he's opened my eyes to, you know, so much, you know. I mean, I didn't realize I didn't need any friends until I had my son. I'm happy I have my friends, and I'm glad that I have my support system, but sometimes it really is just me and my son,
right?
And that's all that I really need. You know,
it's okay sometimes, right?
It is. It is. It does get lonely once in a while, but for the most part, it's okay,
right?
You know, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy, you know.
Do you still have a decent relationship with his dad?
Yeah, we co-parent pretty well. I mean, you know, he, without getting too much into it, you know, we just didn't work out.
Gotcha.
And, you know, we're doing pretty good at you know, the co-parenting thing.
Right.
There are things that we don't agree on, which happens.
Of course. That's every relationship with everybody.
Exactly. And there are things that do tend to get in the way. But for the most part, we both remember that at the end of the day, it's not about us or our lives. It's about Callan and his life and his well-being and his best interest.
Right. And he feels that way too, his dad. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, yep.
Very cool. Do you guys have like 50-50 kind of thing? Or?
So it's just weekends, you know, so he goes to his dad's house on the weekends, you know, doesn't do the overnight thing because, you know, he's still kind of a mama's boy, very much a mama's boy. So, you know, doesn't really do the overnight thing, but will go and, you know, spend the weekends during the day with his dad. And, you know, they have a whole bunch of fun together. So
cool.
as long as they have that bond and they're having that fun together and they're developing a good relationship with each other, that's all I could ever ask for.
Yeah. That's good.
So
that's good. I mean, that's cool. That doesn't always work out that way.
No, some people are very much like a revenge. Like we didn't work out, so you're never seeing your child again, and that to me that's such a disservice to kids.
Oh, totally.
Such a disservice.
Totally.
You know,
and they'll regret it someday.
Yes.
When they see the resentment.
And the child will see that it wasn't because this parent was as bad as the other parent said they were.
Right.
It's because this parent was so resentful and so hateful and jealous and couldn't get past their own feelings that they punished the child instead.
Right.
Very much a punishment to the other parent, but a big punishment to the child.
Right.
Big disservice. So I will never badmouth my son's dad in front of him.
Right.
I will never have anything other than good things.
Right.
Or, you know, I guess neutral things to say, you know.
So that's pretty uncommon with people your age. Did you learn that from your parents? Or is that kind of the relationship they had? Or as far as like, well, I don't want to get too deep into that, but I mean.
So it was always very much a fight over me. It was always a fight. But I look at it like this. I had such a beautiful, incredible, strong relationship with my dad that I would not want to deprive my son of that. If he could potentially have the same type of a relationship with his dad that I had with my dad, why would I ever want to take that away? Who am I to take that away? If my son was in danger, if my son was around people who were going to hurt him, if there were drugs, if there was anything that could possibly put my child's life in jeopardy or danger, absolutely I would say no, sorry, fix yourself, and then yes, absolutely. However, it's a safe, it's a clean, it's a happy, it's a healthy environment. Just because my son's dad and I don't see eye to eye and couldn't be together doesn't mean that has to affect my son. At the end of the day, that's just what it is. Yeah. You know?
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's an awesome viewpoint to have. And the fact that you both have that viewpoint is kind of unheard of.
It's a very grown up viewpoint to have. But I think I would much rather my son be close with his dad than my son have a strained relationship with his dad because I was bitter. Or because he was bitter. You know? It's just not fair. My feelings are not.
At what point in that relationship did you guys realize you weren't going to work out?
Well, I think I kind of realized it before he did. I was pregnant and just called my dad and was like, I can't do this anymore. I just really, truly can't do this anymore. And so my dad came and picked me up, and that was that. I was back home. And we had tried back and forth, and it just wasn't working. I just, I had kind of, you know, fallen out of love with him and just realized it wasn't what I wanted. And I thought maybe for the sake of my son that we could try to make it work, but it just, why would I put myself through something and have these fake feelings or just try to force something to work for the sake of my child when ultimately it's not good for my mental health and not good for my well-being. So it was pregnancy, and I in fact, the first breakup, I even was about a week or a few days before I found out I was pregnant with my son. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah. It was like I did the breakup, and then all of a sudden, and then I told him about it because I felt like, you know, he needed to know. And then we were just kind of in that, like, you know, in the clouds moment, like, we're so happy, we're, you know, having a baby, it's such a beautiful thing. And then, you know, the things started happening, and at that point I was like, okay, I would just rather be back at home. And so yeah, my dad welcomed me back home, and that was it. I didn't really, there was really no looking back after that. So and ultimately I'm happy, you know. A lot of people would rather stay together in those situations, but I don't know. I feel like it was just better off. It was better off, you know. And he's happy, and he's in another relationship now, and they're thriving, and they're great, and they have a great family unit, and I'm very happy for them, you know.
Nice.
I couldn't be happier for them, you know. They're very much doing their own thing, and just like I'm very much doing my own thing. And like I said, as long as my son's not in any danger or around any drugs, and everybody's taken care of and happy and fed and healthy and clean, you can't really, you know, just because I didn't agree with something or we didn't see eye to eye. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, we hit two big ones. We hit transgender, and we hit abortion, and we hit some big political topics there.
For sure.
So do you, like, as far as like right, left, Republican, Democrat, do you think you hold to any of that, or do you fall somewhere in the middle? Or?
You know, I think in a lot of ways I fall somewhere in the middle, because there are very much things that I'm passionate about, and then there are things that, like, I don't know a thing about, you know. I used to kind of keep up with politics a lot more these days I'm a little bit too busy to like really pay attention and really, you know, focus.
You mean like elections and presidents and that kind of thing?
I mean, if it's local things or like statewide things, I will read on, you know, like the propositions or, you know, whatever somebody's trying to sign in, you know, to power. Things that I don't know about, that I'm not knowledgeable about, I definitely tend to read more up on so that I know what I'm voting about, you know. But in terms of like, you know, president, who I'm voting for that instance, like, I can't say that I really pay much attention to a lot of the national things. I tend to keep it more local, state type thing. Right. So.
And you said where you live, it's pretty conservative.
Pretty conservative, yeah.
A lot of Trumpers.
Lot of Trumpers.
It seems like the farther east you go, California, you get a lot of that.
Yeah.
And even Northern California, you get a lot of that. But a lot of like the LA, San Francisco, Santa Barbara area, like here, San Diego, it's more liberal.
Yeah.
Obviously, the bigger cities. I think that's just true across the country.
I think so too. You know, and I mean, my dad was very much a Trump you know, guy, and
yeah.
And at first, I was really like, I don't know, Donald Trump's kind of a questionable person, Dad, you know.
Right. Did you guys ever used to have conversations about it?
Oh, we would heated discussions.
Oh, really?
I mean, just to the point where nobody was talking to each other for the rest of the day, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
but Trump's pretty divisive.
Yeah, and so you know, now it's just something that I avoid talking about, even though the whole point of your podcast is to talk about these things, you know?
Yeah.
I was prepared with everything to talk about, but then the minute that we touch on politics, I'm like, unfortunately, that is something that I tend to not get too political about certain things.
Yeah, well, I mean, politics can mean two different things, at least when it comes to this podcast. And there's that idea, like politics being Trump, Biden, government, you know, Newsom, like you get all like into the government and talking about, there's that kind of politics. And then there's what we talked about, abortion, transgender, those things. That's, you know, gun control. Like there's all these things that can be a political discussion. And that's kind of what I can mean either thing. And I've had guests that want to talk about more about how Trump's the greatest president the world's ever seen, and you know, Biden's an old doddering fool or whatever, you know, and they want to go that route. And I'm fine, we'll talk about that. And other times it's like, no, let's talk about these major issues that are affecting our world, you know, because all these things affect the way we live our lives.
Absolutely.
All the laws being passed, all the protests and the fighting, and a lot of it we can look at and say, well, this just sucks. Why can't we just get along? Why can't we just be at peace? But it's like, some of these things, there's just really no middle ground.
Exactly.
You know, you're either for this or you're against it. There's no, well, I'm kind of for it and I'm kind of, no.
Yeah, it's always one extreme or the other.
Yeah. And I mean, I think some things it has to be that way because it, like, you know, like we were talking about with abortion, like if there's a group that believes that, let's say the pro-life believes that anytime someone gets an abortion from sperm to egg on, that you're literally murdering a baby, then you can see why they're so passionate about that.
Yes.
But then on the other side, if they don't believe that, they're like, well, what are you talking about? It's just a clump of cells. It's just it's a jelly bean, like you said. You know, it's like, what's the big deal? Then they don't understand why these people are so up in arms about it, right? And they're like, well, I should be able to do this. Leave me alone, you know. But I don't think there'll ever be a middle ground there. I don't think those pro-lifers will ever be like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's okay to murder your baby sometimes. Right? Because since they've already established their belief that that's what's happening, I mean, it'd be no different than like if I came to you and I said, my philosophy is that I should be able to murder whoever I want. Right? And obviously you would come up with say, well, Ryan, that's wrong, man. You shouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this is just what I believe, you know, and you're like, well, I believe that's totally wrong. What middle ground are we ever going to come to?
Exactly.
It's either wrong or it isn't wrong, right? So, I mean, so it's just interesting. So, I mean, I think we've covered politics a lot already. I mean, we've already gotten into all those big things.
We sure have.
I just wanted to throw that last thing in there just to see like kind of where you fall as far as right,
I mean,
left.
I'm not no party. That's what I am. I do not associate with a particular party. I have different beliefs about different things, as you see, you know.
Right.
But I'm very, like, even registered to vote. I'm just like, I think I'm independent. Yeah. Okay. Just, you know.
Yeah.
Certain things I will fall into, like, the Republican side for, and certain things I will fall into, like, the Democratic or the Green Party or, you know, whatever, you know.
Yeah, and I'm the same. I don't really classify myself as any of that. I think most of my beliefs fall more right than left, but, like, and I've said this a million times, if a Democratic nominee is up there running and he's talking about what he's going to do with the country, and I like what he's saying about what he's going to do with the country more than the Republican, I'm going to vote for the Democrat.
Absolutely.
I'm not one of those people. It's like Republican or die.
Right.
I don't care who's in there. I don't care if it's, you know, if it's Satan himself running, as long as he's got Republican on the ticket, I'm voting for him. And there's people like that.
There are.
And I will never understand that,
Me
you know,
either.
but it's just, to me, that's no different than, and I've said this a lot too, what bothers me is it gets into like identity politics, right? Where somebody, well, I need to start by saying I'm totally against somebody not voting for a candidate because they're a certain demographic. I'm not going to vote for Barack Obama because he's black, right?
I have a huge problem with that.
I do too.
People lost their minds.
Yes, but at the same time, I have just as much a problem with somebody who votes for him because he's black.
Yes.
That's also wrong, right? I'm like, no, we should be voting for who the best person to run the country is. I don't care if you're male or female. I don't care if you're gay or straight. I don't care if you're black or white or Chinese. I don't care.
Absolutely.
I want to know who's going to do the best for our country. That's all that matters to me.
Regardless of their skin color.
Yes.
Exactly.
All of that stuff.
I feel the same way. I mean, I did think Barack Obama was a pretty good president.
Yeah.
I think he did a lot of great things for our country. But also... universal health care, and it should be free across the board, and everybody should be able to have health care. But at the same time, it's shoved down everybody's throat, and we're all forced to have it.
Yes.
And then you're just like, well, I didn't have a choice.
Right.
I didn't, you know.
Right, which kind of goes against the whole American idea, which is freedom of
freedom
whatever.
of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of everything.
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
And so absolutely, yeah. Liked Obama a lot.
Sure.
Thought he did great things, but
he
again,
was a
Obamacare.
good, I liked him better in his first term than his second, I think, because I think he got way too, I don't know, he started talking about stuff like that, about the racism stuff a little too much, and then, you know, and again, I'm not trying to say that there is no such thing as racism, because obviously there is.
There is yes,
you know? Yes. But I also don't think that there's as much of it. You know, some people paint it out like every single person in the planet is racist. It's like, I don't think so.
Or what I hate is if you're white, you're racist.
Right.
That bothers me so much, you know.
Right, because you're born that way. And last I checked, that is the definition of racism, is if you assume somebody is a certain way because of what they look like or what ethnicity they are.
Exactly.
So if you say all white people are racist, that's a racist statement.
It is. It is. It contradicts itself so much, and it just bothers me, because there are many people who think that because we're white that we're entitled.
Right.
And that we're
white privilege.
White privilege.
Yeah.
Because I'm not privileged.
You're not? You're not? All us white people. We have big mansions up on the hill. We don't have to worry about nothing. You know, it's great.
I grew up in a trailer, for God's sake. Like, my dad drove a station wagon. I mean, you know, we didn't have anything.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So the whole white privilege thing, that bothers me.
Right.
That bothers me so much, you know?
Did you ever see the movie or read the book Hillbilly Elegy? Have you heard about it? It was nominated for a couple Academy Awards. Ron Howard directed it.
Okay.
It had Amy Adams in it, and I think Glenn Close.
Oh, wow.
But it was a true story. J.D. Vance, he's now in the government somewhere. I forgot what state, but he's not a governor, maybe a mayor. Anyway, he's in the government somewhere. But he wrote this life story about growing up in poverty. And somewhere in the South, I think, as a white guy, right? And his mom was a drug addict. Amy Adams plays his mom.
Okay.
Fantastic role for Amy Adams.
Wow.
I mean, I liked her in lots of things, but that sealed the cake for me. I was like, oh, this is great. Sealed the cake. I just made up a term. Sealed the cake. But anyway, my point is, that movie came out, and at first there was a lot of critical acclaim for it. It was nominated for something, but then there was all this backlash of people saying, how dare you make a movie about a white kid who's suffering from poverty and injustice and all this kind of stuff, because white people don't deal with that.
Yes, we do.
This is a bunch of crap. This is wrong. This is not okay. You can't do. And I'm like, are you kidding? And the kid's literally writing about his own life. He lived this.
Yes.
And you're going to tell him that because he's white, he didn't? You're going to deny him that? So then there became this whole thing with the Academy Awards. Like, oh, now we can't vote for this because we'll look like we're racist and blah, 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 blah. So it ended up, I mean, I don't want to call it a flop. Mm-hmm. But I know Ron Howard received a lot of backlash. I'm like, this is Ron Howard. The dude's been making movies and acting forever.
Forever, yeah.
You know, fantastic director, you know. And now you're going to shut him out because he decides to make a movie based on this book about a white kid who had a rough upbringing. You know,
yeah,
it's
I
like,
mean, that's absolutely not fair.
Yeah,
you know?
it's so stupid.
And that's why it just bothers me so much. Like there are people of all races and skin color that struggle.
Sure.
And so the whole white privilege thing to me is just a bunch of phooey.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I'm with you. I look at it like, and I get in so much trouble for saying this, but that's okay because it's my podcast. I'm allowed to. But I mean, I think people say that like white males are the most privileged. And I think kind of they're like the least privileged in a sense because we can't do anything without being called this or that or this, you know,
sexist or misogynistic or anything.
Yes, and there's all these government help systems for every group but white males.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, where's the privilege?
Exactly.
You know, and...
Well, and I think not just white men, but men in general don't have the resources that I think they should have.
No.
You know?
No.
Because there is such thing as abused men.
Yes.
There is such thing as battered men.
Yeah.
There is such thing as raped men.
Yes.
And it's looked at as, well, you need to sweep it under the rug because you're a man.
Right. Deal with it. Man up.
And I don't think that that's fair one bit.
Right.
I think that we are severely lacking in compassion for men.
Yeah.
Because they're men.
Yes.
Because you're supposed to just man up.
Right.
And I don't think that's fair.
Which last I checked is kind of like sexism.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But it's okay if it's towards a man. That's all right that way. But the other way, not so much.
But that ideology comes from these like radically feminist women who just are born hating men for whatever reason.
Right.
And so they think, well, man up.
Yeah.
Man up.
Yeah.
And then they put that idea into their sons and their, other children's heads. And then soon we have men who are saying, well, man up.
Right.
Man up.
Right.
And so in a sense, it's like kind of girls' fault sometime, you know, because we look at us, we get all this special treatment. We have women's shelters. We have women, infant, children, WIC.
Yeah.
You know, it's not men, infant, and children, because there are single dads out there.
Right.
So, but you mean to tell me that what if his wife died in childbirth?
Right.
Because he's a man, he cannot qualify for those services for his child because it is specifically women, infant, children.
Right.
And that is sexist.
Yes.
That I don't agree with.
Wow. You're going to get yourself into trouble now.
And, well, I feel very strongly on that. I feel very strongly on that.
I love it when they just flow like this. It's like, it's so natural.
I can imagine that, like, sometimes it gets hard or awkward because people are so, set in their opinions and their ways, and in a lot of aspects that makes people so against other people's opinions, and so then it gets hard to keep the conversations going. But when when you either tend to agree on things or you can see where that other person is coming from, it does make things flow a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. Or you're just open to whatever. I mean, like we're going to get into now, but I mean, I've even said, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm totally open to there not being a God.
Right.
So if someone can present compelling evidence to me that there is no God, I'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to believe something that's false.
Right. Well, nobody does.
Well, there's some that would say, I'm going to believe this no matter what. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up, kind of thing. And
that reminds me of those like anti-vaxxer people.
Yeah.
They're like,
right.
Vaccines cause autism, so I'm not getting my kid vaccinated. And it's like nowhere in the world is there any study that proves.
Not proves. There's plenty of studies that allude to that. But again, I always say, well, where's the evidence?
Exactly.
There's not enough, for me, conclusive
I would rather have an autistic kid than have a kid with polio.
Right.
That's just my mindset.
Right.
You know.
But if you notice, none of that talk really started happening until all the newer vaccines started coming out. It wasn't about polio. It wasn't about DTaP, and it wasn't about what's some of the other ones. MMR. Yeah. Some of those ones. Those were all ones we had when we were kids.
Measles, mumps, rubella,
You don't really see a lot of that.
No.
It wasn't until they started saying, now we take our kids and they're now, like, we're going to give you 8 vaccines this time and come back in 3 weeks and we'll give you 4 more. And then when they're 2, they're going to get more. And it's like, oh my gosh, how many are there now?
Yeah.
You know, so we've always been selective vaccinators, not anti-vaxxers, not pro. I mean, we're selective. We say, well, what is this?
Right.
Oh, this is for, what, like chicken pox. We're always like, we'll just get, and that's what we've always done. Oh, a friend of ours' kids has chicken pox. Go get them to hang out together.
Yeah, that's what my parents did.
Mine too.
I got chicken pox when I was little. I got chicken pox when I was very little.
Right.
I mean, I did choose to get my son vaccinated for chicken pox, but I thought of it long term because he won't have to deal with shingles when he's older.
Exactly.
So that's where my mindset was. It's like, well, if I just get him vaccinated now for chicken pox, then when he's an old man and can decide these things for himself, he can think, oh, thank goodness my mom decided to do this so that I don't have to suffer from shingles.
Yeah, because shingles sucks.
Yeah.
That's like the worst.
Yeah.
I've known people that had that. Bethany had that.
My grandma, my mom's mom, got shingles a couple of months ago, and it was bad. It was bad, and she's up there. She's like 76. So
how many? Was it like all over?
It was all over. Ooh. Yeah, her arms had it the worst too.
See, that's the people that get it the worst. I think there's some people like Bethany's was very localized. It was a small part. I think it was on her back somewhere. I want to say my mom had it at some point, but I think hers was pretty localized. But then you see people that are like, oh, it's all over their body.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I know.
That's just like, just kill me.
Yeah. And it is, to my understanding, it's so painful. And so, like.
Which is different than chickenpox. Chickenpox are itchy and they're annoying, but, there's ointment and stuff for that. It's like,
calamine lotion and oatmeal baths and all that.
Right.
Shingles, just, you have to kind of suffer.
Yeah, no good. No good. So. Cool. So we'll jump into spirituality. You kind of said at the get-go that you believe in God, but you're not really religious. So kind of lay that out for me.
I believe in God, or that there is a higher being of some type. Because there are parts of what I know of Christianity that I don't necessarily vibe with. Not that I don't agree with it, just that I'm just like,
Right.
Because there are things to me that make a little bit more sense, such as reincarnation.
Okay.
The idea of being reincarnated makes sense to me because Deja-Vu is one of those things.
Oh, I love Deja-Vu.
Where you are like, oh my gosh, I've done this before. This has happened before, And so to me, it makes sense. Like, well, yeah, of course it's happened to you before because you've lived a past life. You've done something similar, or you've been in this same situation. Or I even believe that we all exist in like different dimensions,
Oh, like quantum physics. Okay.
Yeah, or like the how the Marvel movies right now are like the Spider-Verse and and the multiverse and stuff, just different versions of yourself in different parts of time or different parts of each dimension or universe or what have you. So that's where I definitely believe in reincarnation in that aspect because it just makes sense to me with deja-vu and this and that. And like I said, whether it's God or whether it's a higher being, I do believe that there is something
something
intelligence or something all-knowing, ethereal that that has created us and made us part of their simulation, whatever it is,
the Matrix.
I mean, in a sense it all is, if we believe in creation and that we were created, then in a sense it is technically a simulation. In a way.
Simulation meaning?
Meaning like this,
like something set into motion.
Like something set into motion.
Okay.
Yes, this was all intended. Yes.
But you believe in like free will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that you were created like as a robot and you don't really have any say-so in the decisions you make.
No.
Okay.
No.
So like, I usually go into like intelligent design with, but you sound like you're already there as far as like you don't buy into the idea that something from nothing.
Right.
Like we just appeared here one day and all that we have, and
No.
there's no creator, there's no intelligent being behind anything. So it's the theory that there's an intelligent designer that made everything. Now, whether or not that's space aliens, whether or not it's God, whether or not it's a energy force, whatever it is.
Exactly.
But it's something with intelligence.
It is. It's something with some type of intelligence, and I do believe that we didn't all get just all of a sudden turned into Homo sapiens and this intelligent species. I believe that we were given the tools to evolve. And
okay, so you believe in like progressive evolution.
Yes.
So you believe in evolution,
Yes.
but you believe that something intelligent started the process.
Yes.
Somebody put the amoeba there that transformed into a fish to a bird to the whole deal. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you see any like when you look at like evolution, like just the idea? Because there's macroevolution, there's microevolution, right? Like micro is like adaptation, right? Which is we see that all around us, right?
Yes.
Like Darwin's finches and their beaks changing so they could get the seeds and that whole deal. But then there's macro, which is more molecules to man, is what they call it, as far as the different life forms turning into other life forms. As far as I don't know if it's species or kind. I always get the science wrong, but basically the idea that, like I just said, fish to chicken to whatever. I don't know the whole progression, and then eventually apes, and then apes to us. Do you believe that part of it too, like on a grand scale like that, or?
I mean, I don't believe that a fish is going to turn into a chicken necessarily, but I believe,
but over millions of years, you think they evolved into that?
But scientifically, we've seen, Australopithecus, Neanderthals, troglodytes, that kind of stuff. It's we see that evolution specifically. We see where we start as these, primitive men on our knuckles and, and then we slowly, as millions and millions of years progress, we, I guess, adapt.
Right. Stand upright.
Stand upright and become more intelligent and invent the wheel.
Right.
I guess.
So that would be more like the evolution of like early man to modern day man. But do you think that early man evolved from a monkey?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, it seems like it would make sense. I mean, because monkeys are pretty similar to us.
In their structure. And
they're
the most similar as far as all the animals go. Right.
Well,
apes, I guess, technically are the most similar.
Right. So I think in that instance, yes.
Okay.
But the it's chickens were raptors. Maybe like kimono dragons were raptors, or or some type of dinosaur. Previously, but or birds were dinosaurs in a sense. I guess I struggle with that unless we're like the pterodactyl, obviously the flying one. But
I think birds look like dinosaurs. Like, you ever look at an ostrich or an emu?
Yeah, but
you're like, those are prehistoric looking to me.
They're awful. They're they're ugly
they
too.
Are.
They're mean.
Yeah.
They're so mean.
Right.
And so,
or like a giraffe. If you look at a giraffe, like to take off the fur and put scales, that's a dinosaur.
That's a dinosaur.
You know what I mean?
You're not wrong.
Which I'm no evolutionary biologist or anything, nor am I a paleontologist or any of that stuff, but I always think to myself, we have dinosaur bones, right? How do we know they had scales? How do we know that they didn't have fur? How do we know? How do we know they couldn't speak? How do we know all that based on bones, right? It's like all we really have is the structure of this animal. And there's been a lot of times where they've gotten it wrong. Like the Brontosaurus. Like, I grew up believing in a Brontosaurus. And they found out later that they put the wrong head on it. And then it became an Allosaur, I think, or something, right? There's something. And I'm convinced that the T-Rex, they put the wrong arms on that guy.
They did put
They must have put, they put like some alligator arms on or something. Because he's like, that's got to be a mistake, you know?
There's no way that he was the biggest predator. The meanest guy, the top of the food chain. And you mean to tell me he had these little shrimp arms,
All you gotta do is trip the guy and he's done for.
Exactly.
He's not getting up.
Exactly.
So, but I mean, so I mean, for me, I see a lot of flaws in that idea of one species into another. And there's a movie, it's a Christian movie, of course, but it's from a creation viewpoint by a guy named Ray Comfort, who's from New Zealand. But he did a movie called Evolution versus God. And all he did was go around and ask people questions. He's got his microphone, he's got the camera going, And he went to like UCLA, he went to all these big universities, to their biology departments, evolutionary biologists, and he was just basically asking them for proof of Darwinian evolution. And he always had to specify, because he'd say, you know, so I'm proof of Darwinian, is there proof of that? And the guy goes, yeah. He said, well, what? Show me some, you know, and he gives the microphone to the guy, and the guy goes, well, he goes, for example, you know, like I mentioned, the Darwin's finches, their beaks changed in order to get in. And he goes, no. He goes, wait a minute. He goes, are they still birds? And the guy goes, of course they're still birds. He goes, no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about proof of Darwinian evolution, like one animal turning into another animal. Is there any evidence of that? And he never really got a solid answer.
Right.
I asked similar questions when I was in college, which I went back to college as an adult, like about 5-6 years ago now. Finally got my AA. I was like, yes. But not that it's really doing anything for me these days, but it was fun. I was like the old guy in the class, you know. It was kind of cool. I got all these young kids, and you know, so I'm doing projects with them. Like, I was an old guy, but it was fun. I met a bunch of really cool people. But I took biology, and that was one of the things she was talking about up there. And she was talking about Lucy, you know. And I'd just seen a documentary the night before. And it wasn't a religious documentary; it was a secular documentary, and they were talking about how they now know that Lucy was not a missing link, that she was just a species of ape that they don't. There's no longer. It's extinct now. It's no longer around. So they had determined that. So I said, and she was presenting it as a missing link. I said, well, hey, I just saw this thing on the TV last night, and it's not this, and said that she's not a missing link, and she just jumped on me, and she goes, there are no missing links in the fossil record. There's none. There's no missing links in the fossil. I said, really?
Whoa.
I said, interesting. I said, I've never even heard a biology teacher say that before. Most of them will admit there's plenty of holes in the fossil record.
Right.
If we're trying to prove that, you know, apes became people and that whole deal. And she goes, oh yeah. She goes, there's no. I said, well, can you show me? Because again, I'm open. Great. Show me some evidence of that. And she goes, oh, well, here's this book. She brings this book from home. Read chapter such and such. Talks all about it. I said, great. Went home, read the chapter. Didn't say anything about any of that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what? Like, are you that like blinded by your own beliefs that you can't even see that this is not even in what you're telling me?
I feel like even in that field of work, in a sense, yes, there is the science that says this is this and this is why, but you still it should have an open mind, because it's all ever changing, you know. I mean, the way that technology is these days, the discoveries that we're making, the conclusions that we're able to come to, I mean, you shouldn't just be so closed-minded and set in a certain way when it comes to biology and things like that, because then you're sort of going against what you essentially set out to believe in. And
you should always start off with a blank slate. You should never approach anything with preconceived ideas that you're going to interpret the evidence through those lenses.
Exactly.
Ever. Like, it should be like, no, I'm going to take the evidence and let the evidence tell me what it's going to tell me. Even if that flies in the face of what I think I know.
Yes.
Great, I'll change my belief system then. Because what's the other option? Oh, I know now this is not true, but I'm going to keep chucking along with it, you know? It's like, why would you do that, you know?
It doesn't, that for me, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're because everything is always ever changing, you know, and we're making new discoveries every day,
right?
And some of these new discoveries that we make completely like discredit what we thought,
right?
It just doesn't make any sense to me when people are so. I mean, and maybe it was maybe for her it was like, oh well, I'm being challenged as the teacher. Absolutely
could
not.
Be.
You know,
could be, especially because I asked it in front of the class, you know, and I know there's a lot of pride there, you know, it's like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already the old guy in the class, so it's like, who's this old guy think he is? You know, of course, she was older than me as the professor, but, you know, so I get that. I understand. But, you know, it's like, well, then let's bring it into private quarters. Let's just you and I talk about it. Why? I'm not trying to call you out in front of everyone. You know,
no, absolutely.
That's not my intent.
You just,
you know?
You saw something. And
right.
You
exactly. And I just asked a question. I didn't, you know.
And you wanted to you know, look more into it and maybe have more of a discussion about it, and maybe she took it as like an attack or something. I mean, unless she really does, you know, believe that there are there are no missing links.
Maybe. I mean, again,
yeah.
but, I mean, for me, if I believe something so strongly, I have reasons for that.
Yeah.
Not just because I want it to be true.
No, but because there's good hard proof for
yes.
it, you know?
Yeah. Or at least some.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like 100% proof.
Right, but enough to
yes.
rationalize that this is why this is,
right.
you know?
Enough to convince me of that,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Mm-hmm. So we agree on intelligent design.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good starting point, because honestly, I'm at the point in my life where if somebody doesn't at least believe in that, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Right? Because, I mean, to look around and think that's all just happened one day with no direction, no anything, it's like, really?
Right.
It's just too crazy to me to believe that. That's a crazy thing to believe.
Me too.
But then, of course, you can only go so far with that, because then you have all these other religious beliefs, and who is this intelligent designer? Well, some people say he's this, and some people say she's this, or some people say it's this, or whatever it is, you know. I had one on the first season called the Sparkly Purple Mist. And my guest was that was her view of the god.
Was a sparkly purple
yeah,
mist.
it's like an energy force, but it was sparkly and purple. I said, well, that's cool. I like purple. Purple's my favorite color. You know, but that was kind of her view, right, of this creative force. But
it's still not nothing.
It's not nothing. Exactly. It's something. And I think she even said it's intelligent. So we would agree that whatever the creator is intelligent. Then I would ask you, do you think that this intelligent designer is personable? Do you think that he's still, or she or it, or however you view that, is still involved with us as the creation? Or do you think it was more like I'm starting this project and I'm out? I'm not looking back. You guys do your own thing. Yeah. See you later. I hope you survive. If not, I don't care. I've got other planets. I'm starting over here.
Right.
Or do you think he's still involved very much in us as humans?
That's tough. Maybe he's got homies.
Maybe. Like other gods?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean...
Polytheism?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know?
You think that's an option?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think that's an option because, I mean, there's very much, and lately now we're seeing that there is life beyond, you know, with the whole aliens thing.
Yeah, have you been following that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Why is nobody talking about this?
I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's one of those things where they're trying to like...
Yes, but I mean, you got the whistleblower guy who's talking about that, and then I don't know if you saw this. There was some guy in the 911 call. Did you see this?
Where he was like, I thought the cops were like down the street from his house or something, and the saucer, the guy in Vegas, the saucer just like landed in his backyard.
And he's saying that there's like 8-foot beings in his backyard.
Yeah.
And the dude's like totally calm, and it wasn't like a kid, like making a prank.
No.
I mean, maybe the guy was on drugs and seeing things. I don't know, but he sounded like he believed what he was seeing, right? So it's like, whatever. I'm like, why is nobody talking about this? Why is nobody investigating this? The homie just said he's got 8-foot aliens in his backyard. I would have been there in a heartbeat.
Me too.
If I lived down the street, I'm like, I'm there.
Right there.
Yeah.
I would have been looking out my window.
Yes.
Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
You know?
Was it Vegas? Is that what you said?
Vegas.
I couldn't remember where it was. I was trying to tell Bethany I couldn't remember, but
I'm pretty sure it was Vegas because I got a text message from a friend and they were like, "Did you see that there's aliens in Vegas?" And I was like, okay, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But like, can you give me some context here? Like, what's, and
it wasn't Area 51's out there somewhere, right?
I think it's somewhere near Nevada.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, or it's in
It's in Nevada, but not in Las Vegas.
It's not in Las Vegas, but I think it's close enough to Las Vegas.
So maybe they're coming back to where they landed earlier and all that whole stuff.
I mean, and if they were hostile and they have all of this technology that, that everybody assumes that they have, I think we would have been incinerated ages ago.
Did you ever see the movie Mars Attacks?
No.
It's a more of a lesser known Tim Burton movie. I don't know if you're a Tim Burton fan.
I do. I love.
But
Tim
he did
Burton.
Mars. You should see it. It's really funny.
Okay.
Because it's all in Tim Burton style, of course.
Is it one of those ones? Is it? I think does it have an all-star cast?
Yes.
Okay. I think my dad's
Jack Nicholson plays the president.
Oh my
and it's
gosh.
like it's got everybody in it.
Oh my gosh.
It's great.
Yeah.
But it's hilarious. It's like that. It's like this whole idea like, oh, we're peaceful. But then they're like just start killing everybty and it's like this total alien takeover. Yeah. It's like
oh my goodness.
But it's worth seeing.
Definitely
it's really, really funny.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
He made it in a attempt to pay tribute to some of the early alien movies from like the black and white days and kind of thing. So I mean, it's not a black and white movie, but he it was similar in story and stuff. But anyway, so back to intelligence. So it could be multiple gods.
It could be. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because how can you, I mean, if we're talking about like a higher being that, I mean, maybe, you know, he's so powerful that he does have the capacity to, you know, handle everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're thinking like, I don't know, how can one dude or one chick or one being just be in charge of everything, you know?
Right.
Space, the stars, the planets, the like, you know, maybe there's departments, you know, maybe there's the space god, and then maybe there's the sun god, and then, you know, the earth god, and then, you know, what have you, you know, and then there's the Milky Way god, you know, that makes sense to me.
But if you go back, so when we talk about like creative beings, you eventually have to get to a point where there was something that was never created, right?
Oh.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like if we say, well, let's say there's a God today, well, who created? Because people always say, well, if God created everything, then who created God? Is a question I get a lot. It's like, well, then who created God? And my response is, well, nobody. He's always been in existence.
Yeah.
But if you keep going back, you're eventually going to have to come to a place where there's an uncreated creator. There's going to have to be a beginning point somewhere.
Right.
Not beginning meaning he just began to exist, but I mean like... Otherwise, it's just one God create another God, create another God, create another God. Which, again, you can, maybe that goes back for bazillions of years, but eventually you're going to have to get to the ultimate original who created everything below him, right? So if we go with the multi-gods theory, one of them had to have created the others, right?
Or it could be pieces of himself.
Oh, okay. So the same God split into
different beings. You know?
All right. So all the same God.
Just different. You know, I mean, all the same, obviously, in a sense, but you know, like sort of how like we took a rib and then there was Eve, right? That's Adam. That's
Yes.
Yeah. So or Adam took.
Wait a minute. Now you got me. Yes.
Okay.
Eve was made. Adam was made from the ground.
Yes.
And then Eve was made from Adam's rib.
Yes.
Right. As the story goes.
As exactly. So if we're talking about that, then why don't we say the uncreated creator took pieces of himself to put other places, you know?
Sure. But is he like sentient in all of those at the same time? Like, is he one creator that has all the same thoughts at the same time, or is he like...
I imagine it would have to be that way, otherwise I could see them conspiring against each other. You know?
So you're scripting a really cool sci-fi movie. All these gods that are like trying to get the other ones. All right, we got to get rid of this guy. He's too power hungry, you know, or whatever.
This one believes in this, and that goes totally against what we're teaching our people here right now.
But so back to the idea of the personable God, though. Do you see that? Like, I guess here's a good way to say it. Like in your day-to-day life, do you pray? Do you ever talk to God? Do you think that he hears you if you do? Or do you think he's just left us all here to fend for ourselves and he doesn't care about us?
So I think that I pray, I talk to him, and the reason that I know that I'm maybe talking to him and not just myself is because I'll, mention something or I'll think about something and then something will happen that I was thinking about, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so somebody's listening, somebody knows what's going on in there, you know.
Right.
So yes, very much I think that I am not just thinking to myself or talking to myself or whatever, and I do intentionally talk to him. Yeah, I would say it's praying. Praying, just because of the context of the things that I think about or that I ask for, like, keep my baby safe or keep us safe, everybody healthy, all of that,
So you do that obviously because you think that somebody's listening and somebody that cares about you, or else you wouldn't do that.
No.
If you just thought he just didn't care at all, why would you ask him to help everybody be safe? You're like, well, he doesn't care about me.
But then if I also didn't have a little bit of belief that he wasn't there, because I have seen things happen that it only realistically makes sense that there's somebody listening and somebody that cares, whether it's God, whether it's a sparkly purple mist, whether whether it's a floppy 8-foot alien, who knows, you know, it's some big guy up there is keeping tabs on us and does very much care about us, and you know, but again, there's free will, and there's you know,
so that gets into like the question of morality, like so since there is free will, if someone takes their free will and they go and they shoot up a school, right, and they kill 50 kids,
then they're monsters.
They're monsters. I would agree.
Yes.
But do you think God, the God that you, or whatever you want to call it, that you believe in, is he upset by that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So he doesn't want us to hurt each other.
No.
Okay.
He doesn't want us to hurt each other. He doesn't want us to hate each other.
Okay.
But we have free will, and that's just what happens.
Right.
You know.
Right.
If we didn't have free will, it would very much be a perfect life.
Right.
Nobody would do bad things. Nobody would be hateful.
Right.
Nobody would have ill intentions.
Right.
But the free will is what makes us such imperfect beings.
Right.
You know.
But it's also what makes things like love and hate real.
Yes.
Right. Because if I'm made as some sort of robot and I'm perfect, then I can't really choose to love somebody or even to love God or to love my wife or my children.
Right.
Because it's just natural nature. Everybody does it. It's just inherent, you know,
and I think at that point too, it wouldn't be like you're choosing one specific person to love. I think if everything's perfect and everything is, you know, set in that type of way and there's no free will, it's just like everybody loves everybody, you know, the same. So there's, you know, multiple things going on versus like our free will gives us the I guess the means to choose to love one person, to choose to see their flaws and still accept them for those flaws.
Right.
You know, and to love them even though they're not perfect, you know.
So do you see this God figure? I'm going to keep saying God, even though that may not be the word you would use. Do you see this God figure as loving us in that way, loving us unconditionally? Or do you think there's anything we could do that would make him stop loving us at some point? Because like the love from a parent to a child is unconditional for the most part, right? Like our children can do things that hurt us, things that even hurt other people, things that are horrendous.
But we're going
to love them anyway.
Gonna love them.
Doesn't mean we love what they're doing.
Right.
But we love them because they're our children.
Well, and I think if we are created by a higher being and we're created out of love, I think that love is unconditional.
Okay.
So, absolutely.
You think true love is unconditional?
True love is...
There's other forms of love.
There absolutely, there's platonic love and,
right.
and all of that. I think true love is unconditional.
Okay.
And I think it's hard to know what true love is if you haven't had a child.
Right.
You know, there are people who, you know, very much love each other and, you know, that's good. But I really think that you don't know true love until you've had a child.
Yeah.
And you've seen that kid and you've felt just that like intense love and emotion.
That you would die for them in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
Right.
And that you would kill for them in a heartbeat, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I think that he's capable of getting disappointed with us and, you know, being upset with us, but ultimately still loving us because we're not perfect.
Right.
You know.
Right. Well, I see it the same as as a parent-child relationship. Like I see it as God is our father.
Yeah.
And he's like the ultimate father, really. Like he's more of a father than our own father is, really.
Right.
And our own earthly fathers are supposed to be a representation of that, of course.
Somebody referred to him one time as the Sky Daddy.
Oh no!
Yeah. And so every time I hear God being referred to as like father, just the whole Sky Daddy thing comes back to mind, and it cracks me up.
That's awesome.
But I mean, yeah, no, in a sense, it very much is like a parent, you know, because this being did create us, and you know, does love us and does want us to be our best selves.
Sure.
but is also the understanding that we are not perfect and we were not created to be perfect.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we were created to be imperfect and to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes and grow as humans all the way up until we die, you know.
Right.
So
do you see him as all-knowing? Like, do you think he knows the future of us? Like, when we're going to make mistakes, he already knows?
I think I see him as all-knowing, but I also think that, like, there's multiple decisions that we can make. Kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure book or something.
You know? Remember those?
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely,
Okay.
you know? So it's like, it's like that. It's like, well, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, and I know which one I would prefer for you to do, but you, as a, you know, imperfect little human being that you are, you're going to just go wherever you're going to go because you have that ability.
Right.
But there's all these different ways that it could go, you know? And so life could maybe just be one big choose your own adventure, and the dude in the sky is like, well, I want you to do this, but you're not gonna, or you're maybe gonna do this here, but then you're not gonna do the right thing there.
Right. That's what I mean, but do you think he knows which decisions we're going to make before we make them? Or do you think that's like a shock? Like, oh, Ryan, I thought you were going to do the good thing and you did the bad thing. I can't believe it.
I think he knows what we're gonna do, but I think he also knows what we should do and what he wants us to do.
Okay.
So whether or not we go and do what he wants us to do, he'll never know.
Right.
It'll you know, it's like it's like football or sports. You want your team to win, and you're pushing for them to win, and they're making all the right moves and they're doing all of the right things. But then the other team comes in and wins, or your team fumbles, or you know, there's an interception or something.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So yes, ultimately he knows what the outcome is going to be.
We don't.
Right. But he knows, and so he knows that there are different things that we could do.
Right.
But he knows what we're going to do.
Okay. And do you think so? If you agree that he created us, do you think he created us for a purpose? And if so, what do you think that purpose is?
It's hard to imagine.
Like why he would create us? You mean like as far as
just entertainment purposes? I don't know, was he bored?
Yeah.
You know?
Let's see what they do.
Right. Let's watch this unfold.
Right,
you know?
right, yeah.
But because I mean, if you're a big all-knowing being and you're perfect and you have the ability to do whatever with whatever, why would you create life and people and intelligent beings?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Where's the purpose if you already are capable of doing whatever you want and capable of being wherever you want? Other than maybe for some type of entertainment or, you know, bigger picture thing. Right. What is the point?
Yeah. What if you got lonely? There's no other sentient beings. It's just you know.
Then create a bunch of people and, you know.
I mean, make plants. Those are kind of cool, but they can't talk.
They can't talk,
really. They're not capable of love or anything like that.
Live vicariously through your children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good. That's the way I would answer it. I would say I think that he created us to love him.
Yeah.
And to be in a relationship with him. But I also think he gave us free will. That means that we can say, nope, don't want it. Don't believe in you. I'm an atheist, whatever. And I think he gives us that ability, and I'm grateful for that.
And he doesn't punish us when we choose not to believe him. He lets us go on to live normal, or he. See, at that point though, it's like, is he still even in control of the people who don't believe him?
Right.
And at that point, like, I would agree, yes, because if he is the creative, big, you know, all-knowing, then absolutely. But he's not punishing them because they don't believe in him. You know, he's not ruining their life or making them unlucky or making everything go wrong for that. You know, he is just, the love is unconditional, so he's just going to, you know, let you do your thing. Right.
So, like, if you ever meet, like, a really strong Christian that really believes their whole life is about the Lord and they're all about church and the Bible and everything else, yet they have all these issues, health issues, mental issues, or whatever. Let's just their child dies or something, like something happens, right? You see all those things, and then you meet somebody who's a flat out atheist, who doesn't believe in any of that, doesn't believe in God, and their life seems to be going fantastic. They never have any problems. They got all this money. They don't have to worry about financial problems. They don't have to worry about health problems. Everything's going great. And you see that, like, do you think their belief or lack thereof has anything to do with that, or do you think it's just the way the cards fall?
I think sometimes it's just the way the cards fall. Yeah, okay. I don't think one way or the other. I mean, I don't think God is necessarily happy about there being a bunch of little kids that get shot up at a school.
Right.
Right. Again, that's where the free will comes in, is because, that wasn't his intention.
Correct.
In creating us.
Right. But do you think he could have stopped that guy from doing it before he did? Do you think he's all powerful in the sense that he could stop evil from happening whenever he chooses to? That's a hard one.
That is a hard one.
Because if we say yes, then the next question is, why didn't he?
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, well,
and then
did he have a purpose for allowing that to happen or not,
And then you can get into all different kinds of things about that, That's why, belief is belief.
Right.
Because you feel strongly in your belief and your morals and your, religion or what have you, And so at that point it does make it hard in some instances, because he very well could have stopped that.
Right.
But again, there's the free will, and there's he knows what's going to happen, and he knows that there are all of these other different decisions that could have been made, but the specific decision to take a weapon and kill innocent children was his and his alone.
Right. Do you think that guy should be punished by God?
Yes.
Yes. So a minute ago you're talking about how he doesn't punish us for our wrongdoings and that we're not perfect, but something like that you think is deserving of punishment.
Well, we do, it is said that we go and we answer to when we die, when our body dies.
Right.
Our spirit goes and we do, face God.
Sure.
And at that point, absolutely.
Right.
You'd be like, look, dude, you had all of this laid out in front of you.
Right.
You knew it was wrong, and you chose to do it anyway.
Right.
And I love you, but I'm so mad at you for this.
Right.
And like you need to answer. You need to be held accountable for this.
And what would that accounting be? Like, do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in a heaven and a hell?
You'd probably get like reincarnated as like an ant or something, or just be like,
or a dung beetle or something.
Or a dung beetle, yeah. Some not fun, like, a grain of sand being pierced by the sun,
right.
in the Sahara Desert, like, just some type of
something bad. But you don't believe in like a hell, like an afterlife.
Because again, I believe that like our souls are just recycled.
Okay.
We're.
Oh, so you don't believe in a heaven either?
I mean, I in a sense, I believe that we do when we die. After our body dies, this body dies, we go and we answer to. And then
depending on what we've done in life, we're reincarnated as something good or something bad.
Yes.
Okay.
Or, something in between or whatever, Ultimate paradise to me seems maybe a little far-fetched. I want to believe it because knowing how great my dad was, I want to believe that he's up there chilling, living his best life, having, watching us, being proud, being happy, being loving. But at the same time, I see so much of my father in my son that it's hard to not think that some part of my dad is in my son.
Oh, it is. I mean, DNA alone, right? I mean,
well, absolutely DNA.
But when you talk about like reincarnation, and if your dad could have been reincarnated as another person or another human, but your son was what, 3?
He was 3 when my dad died, but I mean, even before my dad passed away, there were very much like so many things, and your mom gave me baby pictures of my dad.
Oh yeah.
There's like almost no difference between my son and my dad at the same age, So
isn't that crazy?
So it's weird, and not necessarily that my son maybe or that my dad got like some part of him reincarnated into my son, but in a sense of like there's maybe a part of him did go to rest in my son, and a part of him went to be birthed as some new person or something, you know, or maybe he decided to go mess around in another dimension or something, you know, whatever. Who knows? There's the possibilities are completely endless, you know.
Yeah. And if it is, this is kind of a weird mix of religions, I think, but if there's an intelligent being, and let's say Christianity involves in reincarnation, then I would see that God as saying, okay, I'm going to reincarnate your dad into someone that you're going to meet someday down the line. And so, it's going to be some like amazing, like, whoa, you're my dad, you know? Right. But I mean, if I understand reincarnation correctly, you completely forget your previous life, right? You do. Except Deja-Vu, when some of it comes in. Right. Yeah. But I've also heard people talk about like soulmates in a sense of not necessarily like in a lover's sense, but like soulmates as like the people that you're closest with and that love you unconditionally and that will always love you are the same souls that you travel through each life with. Okay. But they come back in different forms, you know. And you don't necessarily recognize each other. Exactly. But you do go through life together in some way, whether it's like brother and sister, or, you know, husband and wife, or mother and child, mother and father, you know, whatever. But I've heard that theory of like these souls stick with you, and like that's why some friends, some sisters, some parents and children have such strong unbreakable bonds, is because their souls have been together for millennia, you know. That's interesting. It is. And so that's something that I've kind of like thought about, you know, maybe looking more into. So how would you look, see, I'm like, I as I told you, I'm an evidence-based person. How would you look into something like that, like to see if there's validity to it, Again, because it's hard to know if there's validity to it, you know. Because, I mean, there's, you know, people say, well, I feel like I've known you my whole life, even though I've known you for a year or for 10 minutes or for whatever, you know. It's hard to know that there's validity in that, you know, and then, so it's interesting that people have that theory and think about that, be like the twin flame and the soulmates and all that, which again is something that like I want to look more into and see if there is evidence-based you know, evidence on it. But I like you said, how do you know? How? You can't know. It's kind of a hard thing to look for concrete evidence on if it's all based on feelings, souls and feelings, things you can't see. Exactly. Not scientifically, you know, proven kind of stuff. Exactly. But then I think that's where some people get into, oh, well, I'm a psychic and I'm this and I'm that. I think there's a lot of coincidences, you know. Yeah. I think a lot of things happen and just because it happens, you know, not for any particular reason, you know. So but it was interesting. Like I can't remember if I was listening to somebody talk about it or if I read it somewhere, but I did hear that, and it, again, there's no evidence to it, and some people can feel very strongly about it. It's not something that I've looked into enough to have like an opinion about it, but it's very interesting, and it's something that I would and still am interested in pursuing. Like I want to definitely check that theory out and see. And I probably will never ever find anything concrete ever, you know, but it's interesting, you know. Awesome. All right, well, we got 2 minutes. Is there anything else you want to throw out there real quick, or are we gonna wrap it? I think if it's 2 minutes in, let's just wrap. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, good stuff, real good stuff. I know it's gonna be a popular one. Oh, I hope so. If not, you know, if anything, it'll be controversial for sure. Yeah. Oh, we're both getting ourselves into trouble, I think. I think so too, but you know.
Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. If you have any questions or comments, please send me an email at whycan'twetalkaboutthat@proton.me.
If you want to continue the conversation, please join the Why Can't We Talk About That podcast Facebook group. Also, as of the recording of this outro, I still only have one review. So if you haven't yet, please leave a review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you are listening to this from. Thanks. Here's a clip from next week.
No, they're very quick to point a finger. Very quick.
Right. Yes.
Like it's never their fault. It's always because someone else did something else. Like that's the terrible thing. Like the part of accepting that you did something wrong is the growth process. So therefore, if you can't accept that you never did anything wrong, you don't grow.
Right where you are. Yep.
You stay right where you are, and you never grow.
Right.
And that's where we're at. Like
exactly.
And then they wonder what's going on. Why is everything so not working out? It's because you didn't. And I feel like a lot of them, like, they have a problem with failure. Like, I don't know where the issue with failure has become such a bad thing that it can't happen. To me, if I fail at something, great. I can learn.
Right, but I mean,
new.
they're getting it from the society. They're getting it from, you play sports and everybody gets a trophy.
Right.
No, everybody should not get a trophy. If you lost, you shouldn't get nothing.
Right.
You should be taught about how, you messed up.
How are you going to make yourself better if everybody gets a trophy?
Exactly. They should be taught, look, this other team won because they did better than you did.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.